네, 여러분 안녕하십니까?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to meet you.
발족식
Welcome to the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network launching ceremony. My name is Kim Yi, and I am pleased to be your mistress of ceremonies today. I would first of all like to begin by thanking everyone who has come here despite their busy schedules. And of course, I would also like to greet our online participants. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We may not be physically in the same space, but we would like to make sure that our online participants would also feel as if they are part of this energy and this entire experience. As you know, Gangwon Province is the only divided province in the world, and if we can have the voices of hope spread far and wide for peace here, we believe that it will be a rousing call around the world. And today, for this call of peace, we have joined here once again at the PyeongChang Peace Forum 2022 to announce the launching of the GIG, or Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. For this launching ceremony, we have invited the representatives and the co-chairs of the participating countries in the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee. I'd like to ask you kindly to stay with us until the very end. For that, we would first of all like to invite Lee Young-gil, who is an advisor for future strategies for Gangwon Province, to tell us a little bit more about the context behind the founding of this network. Please welcome him to the stage, and please greet him with a big round of applause.
His Excellency, Governor of Gangwon, Moon Choi, and Honorable Chairman of Gangwon Legislative Council, Mr. Kwak Do-young, and Reverend Soo-young Lee of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network, and many respected dignitaries and ladies and gentlemen. This is my great honor and pleasure to give you a brief background of how Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network has come into existence. It was in 2019 when the leaders of Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy made a visit to Gangwon to meet with His Excellency Governor Choi and the leaders of the province, and to make a visit to DMZ and to have conferences and meetings. And when they visited DMZ and saw the only province that's been divided between South and North Korea, and how hurtful it was to them, and they came to realize the importance of cooperation among international partners and the government of Gangwon and both Koreas. So that's the background of how the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network has come into being. So leaders of Geneva Institute were invited to PyeongChang Peace Forum since 2020. There, the public diplomacy, the concept was introduced, and it has become an important factor in PyeongChang Peace Forum. And in the process, and in between annual conferences, Geneva Institute leaders and other partners invited Governor Moon Choi to Washington, D.C. to visit the Cedars, and also had a wonderful chance to visit the White House to meet with the assistants of the President Trump and the State Department and many leaders. So it's the development that we have gone through with the global community. In fact, before, the province of Gangwon has been quite separate from global community, even in an effort to develop inter-Korea relations. Obviously, we have a group which put efforts to bring two Koreas, two Gangwon, into cooperation. But quite often, that cooperation is focused on Inter-Gangwon, Inter-Korea, and with neighboring countries. Now we have come to realize that Gangwon should develop cooperation with global communities in a larger scale. Now in 15 countries, there are Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee in operation, and more countries to join in coming days. And the United Nations organizations like World Food Programs and the UNITAR, that is UN Institute for Training and Research, has been with us. So we have come to realize that we need such a network to bring to Gangwons and also global communities. Hence, Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. We like to make this a UN agenda. I believe that you know a Great Human Initiative that's at the place when the Duman River crosses and intersects with 4 different countries. That includes North Korea, China, Russia, and Mongolia. So it has become a UN agenda, meaning global community together with the area. You know, they want to see peace and prosperity taking place. So one of the clear visions that we want to pursue in Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network is to make Inter-Gangwon initiative as a UN agenda. And we believe that we need such a place like Goseong, city of coexistence, where the people in both Koreas stay together, interact together, travel together, and international people who visited Korean Peninsula will have a free pass and a free trade in that area. So the city of Goseong, the city of coexistence, is one of the very important agenda of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. This network is the very first public diplomacy initiative by Gangwon province. We have never done that. This is the very first public diplomacy initiative. What happens in Gangwon, especially in both Gangwons, has a deep significance for the peace in the world. And this network is just born. So please keep warm hold of it and grow with it. And let's do together with global communities for the peace of Korean Peninsula and the world. And thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity given to me. Thank you.
네, 이영길
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee Young-gil, who is an advisor to the provincial government of Gangwon, who has just told us about the context of the founding of the network, and he has also said about the promotion of peace between the 2 Koreas. And to do so, we have to engage not just the 2 Koreas, but the neighboring countries and the world. This network that is being promoted by Gangwon-do province is very significant indeed.
다시 한번 좋은 말씀
Thank you very much to Mr. Lee for his insightful remarks. Next, we'd like to hear from Lee Soo-hyung, who is a chairman of the Global
무대로 나오셨는데요.
Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. Please give him a big round of applause.
멀리서 이렇게 함께 오셔서 너무 감사드리고
I would like to thank everyone who has traveled a long way to be with us today.
강원도와 협력하고 또
Gangwon province wants to engage with
세계적
partners around the world in a spirit of local governance and work towards peace and cooperation and unification for the 2 Koreas. And through this, we can expand our support base globally and contribute to the promotion of peace and unity here through this network. Gangwon-do will be at the center of this,
이름으로
which is why we have launched the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. Thank you very much, and God bless you for coming to this launching ceremony.
적극적으로 물심양면으로
We have truly had so much support from many people Of course, I would like to first of all acknowledge the remarks and the appreciation of the governor of Gangwon Province, Choi Moon-sun, and the speaker of the Gangwon Provincial Assembly, Kwak Do-young, as well as Choi Young-hwan, who is the ambassador for international relations. Thank you very much for all your support. And we've also heard from Mr. Lee Young-gil, the advisor to the provincial government of Gangwon-do. Thank you very much. We also have many distinguished guests who will be joining us online, who have sent in their videos. Art Lindsay, chair of the USIGCC, Executive Director David Beasley of the UN World Food Program, as well as the representatives and co-chairs of Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee partner countries around the world, which number about 15. We have also worked together with the Christian Association of Gangwon-do Province, an established network of about over 3,000 churches and faith-based religious organizations. Thank you to all the pastors and ministers of these organizations. The GIG Cooperation Network has been established as a non-profit under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it has been established to foster peace and unification for the two Koreas, and also to try to bring in people, influential people around the world as a part of the cooperation network. And through this, we can engage in public diplomacy together through this platform. We have presences in about 15 countries, including the US. We have inter-Gangwon cooperation committees in each of these 15 countries. And here locally, we are continuing to cooperate with major organizations and partners. We have the governor, Choi Moon-sun, with us today, Kwak Do-young, speaker of the Gangwon Provincial Assembly, Choi Young-han, ambassador for international relations, and David Beasley, executive director of the UN World Food Program, Art Lindsay, the chair of the U.S. Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee, as well as chairs from China, Philippines, Israel, India, Singapore, and elsewhere who have sent in their congratulatory remarks by video to share with us their vision forward. And through this, through the launching ceremony, we will promulgate our actions and our intentions overseas. Going forward, we will engage in cooperation not between the two Koreas and the neighboring countries, but also with partners around the world on peace and unification, sports, culture, and arts, and also engage in openness with the two Koreas in Gangwon-do, and also particularly work for the successful opening of the Gangwon Province Winter Youth Olympics in 2024. I hope that we can all pool our spirits and our hearts together for the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. I hope that we can all cooperate together to that end so that we can create great things and great deeds for all of us. I'd like to ask all the pastors and the ministers and the heads of various organizations to be with us together as we launch the network.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Lee Soo-young, for your warm words of greeting. And as he has mentioned, the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network, I hope, will expand out as an important public diplomacy platform going forward. In order to congratulate the launching ceremony of the GIG network, we have three distinguished guests to deliver their congratulatory remarks. Let me first invite our first speaker, Governor of Gangwon Province, Choi Moon-sun. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
네, 오늘 세계 인터 강원
Ladies and gentlemen,
출범을
I would like to extend my congratulations on the launching of the GIG Cooperation Network with all of the residents of Gangwon Province. I would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Lee Young-gil. Thank you very much for all of your efforts. And also Chairman Lee Soo-young. Thank you very much. I would like to express the gratitude of the provincial residents on their behalf. He also leads the Christian Korean Association and also put together prayer events with all of us to wish and hope for the goodwill and welfare of residents. Once again, thank you very much for all of your prayers. We have those from Gangwon province and those that have come from other provinces. But you may wonder, what does Inter-Gangwon mean?
북한 사이에
So as you know, between the two
지명을
Koreas,
같이 쓰는 지명이 딱 두 개 있어요.
there are two areas where we share the territory. One is Gangwon and the other is Gosong. As you know, Gangwon is divided into two, both north and south, and Gosong County is also divided, both north and south.
이게 무슨 뜻이에요?
And you may wonder what this all implies. But if you go to North Korea,
호텔에 이렇게 호텔 밖을 잘 나가지 못하지.
you really cannot leave the hotel that often if you are in North Korea, but I do roam around, and the reason why that can be possible is because if there are any security guards trying to stop me, I would say I'm from Gangwon province, and for them, I kind of look like a North Korean person, so what would happen, North Koreans, so the security guards would not stop me. But I'm pretty sure that Chairman Lee Soo-young, if you go and say that you're from Gangwon, from North Gangwon, I don't think they'll believe that, but when I am in the north, they think that I am in North Korean. And when we bring our soccer clubs, our youth soccer clubs to the north for various events, we say that you should go, you should roam around, you should enjoy yourself. Because you are true residents of Gangwon, whether it be north and south, north or south. So I just wanted to once again emphasize the background of the network. And we also have another governor, Park Jong-nam, who I call a strong man. In Gangwon,
우리 남강원도 인구가 한 155만 되는.
we have about 1.5 million that live in the south of Gangwon, and in the north we have 1.5 million as well that live. So I think that if we do go for a vote, I might lose. Gangwon province is also the land of war. Even before the Korean War, in the 38th parallel, we already had that divided nation. And what happened was once a war broke out, the North Korean soldiers immediately started to attack Gangwon province. And if you look at the number of deaths, it was second in the south. Compared to the population in Seoul and Gyeonggi province, it's true that they have much more people living there, but Gangwon province was second in terms of the number of casualties and deaths because most of the battles took place in Gangwon province, and we did not have enough strong army. So what would happen is the youth would go immediately to war. It was the same case for my dad. He had to train for just a week and went out on the battlefield, and that led to
실종자도 많고
many deaths. We saw many missing soldiers, casualties, injured, and even after this division, it was true that many went to the Abai village and Gangwon province because once they want to go to their hometown as quickly as possible. But you can see that in the process there was a lot of animosity, a lot of fury that summoned itself in Gangwon province. But with the PyeongChang Winter Olympics, I think that we can say that this province is not just a land of confrontation or animosity. I felt that it can be a region or province of peace. And with Dr. Lee Young-gil and many distinguished guests, we were able to expand this initiative to Washington, D.C. and other parts around the world to launch Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. And the agenda of this network is one of a kind, and we had many that were supporting this initiative. So once again, thank you very much for all of your support. And I particularly hope that it can be tabled on the UN agenda. And as you know, in just 2 years, the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics will take place in 2024. And if you look at the name, we've titled this as Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. The international community and IOC wanted Gangwon province, both north and south, to host the Youth Olympics. So that's why the title was Gangwon than any other name. And what we want to do is to host this with Wonsan of North Korea. And just recently, during the Beijing Winter Olympics, we've also delivered officially our proposal to the North Korean delegation there. I would like to ask all of our leaders here present today to encourage our efforts so that we can once again achieve the miracle of the PyeongChang Winter Olympics. And through Gangwon province, I truly hope that we can solve the many issues on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you very much for your support.
네, 도지사님
Thank you very much, Governor Choi, for your warm remarks.
축사 말씀으로 오늘 발주식에
With the congratulatory address, you have
말씀하신 것처럼
stressed upon the significance of today's launching ceremony. We do have the pain and the wounds of war here, but we can also hope for peace in this very land as well. We'd now like to hear from Kwak Do-young, the Speaker of the Gangwon Provincial Assembly. Please give Speaker Kwak a big round of applause.
네, 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 강원도
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to meet you. My name is Kwak Do-young. I'm the Speaker of the Gangwon Provincial Assembly.
발족을 온 도민과 함께
On behalf of everyone here at Gangwon Province, I would like to extend my congratulations to all of you on the launching ceremony of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. I would like to thank Chairman Lee Soo-hyung of the network, as well as everyone else who have worked tirelessly for the launching of this network. Thank you very much. I know that there have been many challenges down the road, so thank you very much for working tirelessly for the launching of this GIG Cooperation Network. And of course, I would also like to thank Governor Choi, who has just left the room. I believe he is very busy and attending to another schedule, but I would like to thank the governor and all of his staff for their tireless efforts. PyeongChang here continues to be a place where peace resides. And here in PyeongChang, we continue to dream and hope for peace. And that is very evident in the launching ceremony of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. I believe it's very significant that we are hosting this here. In contemporary history and modern history, we know that, and we have seen how the issues and incidents in one place can impact the surrounding region.
현안들 또한
We know that is also true of the many issues and incidents that impact Gangwon Province right now.
협력이
To resolve these different challenges, Gangwon Province also has to engage in partnership with many different partners. And in that regard, I believe that the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network is very important. We can look at different measures to resolve our challenges, but also create a base of support for peace and reconciliation and unification for the two Koreas. I'm sure you know, but the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics
남북 강원도의 협력과 교류
can engage in exchange and cooperation with the two Koreas and the neighboring regions if we can have the joint hosting between the two Koreas.
함께 애써주신다.
From the private sector side, if you can also lend us your support, I do believe that that will be a significant help to all of us. Through this launch, I hope that more and more partner organizations will work towards the peace of the Korean Peninsula and the promotion of the Gangwon Province.
다시 한번 오늘 발족식을
Once again, I would like to extend my congratulations to you on the launch of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network, and I wish you all health and happiness. Thank you very much and congratulations.
네, 곽도영 의장님 다시 한번
Yes, Chairman and Speaker of Gangwon Provincial Council, thank you very much for your words. As he's mentioned, we do have many pending issues. We have that of Gangwon. We also need to promote peace. And also in 2024, as mentioned, we're trying to engage in a joint hosting of the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. So we truly do need cooperation, and I hope that this launching ceremony can serve as a platform for us to continue on with our cooperation to solve the many challenges. Next, we have a congratulatory message sent from afar. We have the chairman of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network in the U.S., Art Lindsley, to deliver, who sent his video message. Let us all watch his video.
Join you on the inauguration of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. I've been chairman of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee in Washington, D.C. for the past year. We've been working to assist the PyeongChang Peace Forum and facilitate connections between North and South Gangwon Province. I'm glad to see the past cooperation between North and South at the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. We're hoping to continue that at the 2024 Winter Youth Olympics in PyeongChang. We also hope to see a continuation of the work that returns the bones of deceased soldiers in the DMZ. This has been a moving example of cooperation between the two countries. It's especially exciting to see 8 countries join this network: Germany, Switzerland, Philippines, Bolivia, Indonesia, Israel, and Mongolia. These past 2 years have made it difficult to travel to Korea because of COVID restrictions. We hope that there can be personal interactions with these various countries in Gangwon Province in the near future. I'm also glad to interview David Beasley, the Executive Director of the UN World Food Program. He was the recipient of the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize for the UN World Food Program. He's glad to be with us again at the Peace Forum to update us on the status of world hunger. The lack of food is a significant source of conflict around the world. David says that food is a weapon of peace. We hope that the UN World Food Program will cooperate with the Gangwon province in providing food for North Korea. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
네, 감사합니다. 여러분 박수 한번 주십시오.
Thank you very much, and please give him a big round of applause. We've just heard from Art Lindsay, the chair of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee in the United States. We've heard from so many distinguished guests with their congratulatory remarks, and many people are truly hoping for peace in this region and elsewhere. I do believe that the future is bright for all of us. We now have a talk that we would like to show to you, and this conversation is between Art Lindsay and David Beasley, the Executive Director of the UN World Food Program. We'd like to now watch the screen.
This is Art Lindsley, coming from Washington, D.C. I wanted to give a couple quick remarks before I introduce our guest here, David Beasley. I particularly got involved with this, and I'm now co-chair of the PyeongChang Peace Forum. When back in 2019, I was with the governor on a trip to the DMZ, and we signed an MOU with Governor Moon Sun-choi and Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy to cooperate together on peace and reconciliation, particularly with regard to the poor. And of course, our issue of hunger really fits in very closely with that. And I believe that the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee, which will be particularly inaugurated at this PyeongChang Peace Forum, is something that we got going here back in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, and now it's going to have international branches in various parts of the world. We're excited to see that. I'm also on the steering committee of Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy and on the board of Global Hope Network International. So I'm particularly excited here to have David with us. He comes with us for the second time. He was with us last year, and he's going to give us an update on the situation throughout the world. I think one of the things he talked about back when we first came is that food is a weapon of peace. And we particularly want to focus on the place of hunger and the situation here as a way of really addressing the issues of conflict throughout the world. First of all, David, thank you for being here. I really love the fact that you're able to make time for us again this year.
Art, it's always good to be with you. Thank you very much for allowing me to be on the program.
All right, David is the Executive Director of the UN World Food Program, and he's former governor of South Carolina and winner of the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize for the UN World Food Program. The UN World Food Program is the largest foundation, largest humanitarian organization in the world. Its budget in 2020, and I believe I've been told in 2021, was $8.4 billion. You can correct me on this, David, if I'm wrong, but I want to just focus on a few questions in relation to this issue of hunger. First of all, what's the situation on hunger throughout the world? As I remember last year, the number of people that were in severe hunger, really close to starvation, were somewhere around 80 million, and that grew in 2020 to 130 million. What's the situation now with regard to people in severe danger of starvation or hunger?
Yeah, Art, a couple of years before COVID came on the scene, the number of people not chronically hungry, that's a different discussion, but literally marching toward the brink of starvation, that number was 80 million people around the globe. That number jumped from 80 to 135 million. And so the question would be, what was causing that spike in hunger? And the simple answer was man-made conflict and two, climate shocks around the world. COVID comes on the scene, and now because of COVID, the number is literally doubled from 135 million now to over 285 million people marching towards starvation. And within that, you've got 45 million or so on famine's door as we speak, Art. And by the way, the financial numbers for 2021, our budget, we raised $9.6 billion. And quite frankly, sadly, I'd like to put the World Food Program out of business. We're going the wrong direction right now because of all these crises that we're facing. And we actually have a $6 billion gap this 2022 year because of the perfect storm of climate, conflict, and COVID. And you can imagine what's happening with supply chain as well as price spiking going on with commodities and shipping costs and things like that. So it's a really, really bad time.
Yeah, you've already mentioned it, but what's the relationship between COVID and the economic downturn? Is that you seeing that significantly happening throughout the world?
When you look at the fact that we were 135 million marching toward starvation, and it literally went to 285, there was only one driving factor there, and it was COVID economic ripple effect along with supply chain disruption. When the United States sneezes, most poor countries catch the cold. I mean, the economic ripple, when we slow our economy down, or Germany and the Europeans slow their economy down, it has a devastating impact, compounded with the fact that there were lockdowns around the world, supply chain disruption. And so it has been absolutely devastating to the poor economies, poor countries, low-income countries around the world. And so we're having to double up and try to do everything we can to help these nations in this crisis mode, because if we're not there with the support they need, one of three things, or all three things will happen. One, there will be starvation. Two, there will be destabilization of the nations. And three, there will be mass migration. And Art, the cost of destabilization is 1,000 times more than us going in and providing the food for people to give them stability and hope. Versus also migration is at least 100 times the cost for the people we're talking about. So it's a lot cheaper to go in advance, address root cause, and COVID, hopefully it'll be behind us at the end of this year. But until then, we're all hands on deck, and we've got to stop the crisis that we're facing in dozens of nations because of COVID.
Yeah, one of the things I came across where there are some 43 countries where you're particularly working where starvation is or hunger is a very high rate. Is that correct, or correct me on that?
Well, we've got about 83 numbers where we're doing a serious program, but there are 43 nations right now that have what we call IPC level 4. IPC level 4 is knocking on famine's door. And you can imagine when you've got that, and every one of these 45 million people don't know where their next meal is coming from. So that creates, one of three things, or one of all three things, and that is starvation, famine, death. Two, a destabilizing effect politically becomes a nightmare when people don't have food, and they destabilize, and then you have extremist groups that exploit that, and that becomes an issue in itself, whether it's Al-Qaeda, ISIS, extremist groups, or political extremist groups. And then the third is, of course, mass migration. When people don't have food, they don't have any degree of security or food, they will leave to save their children's and their families' lives. It's just logical. Anybody would. It's no different, no matter what part of the globe you're coming from,
I think that this year there's been a real focus of many people on Afghanistan and what's going on there. And I believe you still have work there. Have you met with the Taliban? What's going on there?
Yeah, Art, if there's a country that is hell on earth, it's Afghanistan right now. We're on the ground there. We hope to reach about 12 million people this month in February. I have been meeting with the Taliban because they control the access in the country and de facto as we speak. And so we have, just like any country, we sit down with whoever is in charge of access. So we've had very frank, very blunt meetings about don't get in our way. Let us do what we do. Give us the impartiality, the neutrality, the independence that we need to operate. And again, we do this in war zones, conflict areas all over the world, so we know how to do this. And quite frankly, they have honored our requests and are protecting our warehouses because out of 42 million people right now, there are 23 million marching to starvation. I mean, in IPC 3, 4, 5. Out of that, 8.7 are in IPC level 4 at famine's door. You can see it's crisis mode. I've been meeting with families, mothers, and to hear the heartbreaking stories of mothers saying, I don't have the money, and if I do, I have to choose between buying cooking oil and therefore freezing my child to death, or buying heating oil and starving my child to death. Or we're selling one of our children in hopes they have a better future, where I can take that money and buy, food or heating oil for our children. It is absolutely catastrophic. And if we're not careful, you're going to have mass migration, which will cost at least 100 times more than the price tag that we're talking about to reach the 23 million that we need to reach at 50% rations now is $220 million per month. Per month. Do the math. And so we're in a crisis mode, Art, as we speak. And when you consider that, look at Ethiopia and Sudan and Yemen and Syria, you begin to see why we're $6 billion short. And so where is that money going to come from? You go take it from the children in Ethiopia or the children in Yemen? It's a very difficult spot to be in, as you can imagine. When you don't have enough money, we have to choose which children eat, which children don't eat, which children live, which children die. It's not fair to ask us to make those type of decisions, especially when there's $430 trillion worth of wealth on earth today. No child should be starving to death. It's just absolutely preposterous. But anyway, Art, we're all hands on deck in Afghanistan.
Thank you. One of the things that will be of particular interest for people in South Korea, but also throughout the world, are you able to get food into North Korea? What's the situation there?
Yeah, we have been in North Korea, had a long-term operations there, and quite frankly, because of COVID, everything has been shut down. And we were sort of the last operating humanitarian organization in the country. And finally, all things came to an end. And so hopefully when COVID makes the turn and North Korea opens the doors back again, we're prepared and ready to go in and help the people in North Korea as we would in any place where there's need.
Thank you for that. How are you able to raise money for the World Food Program? I don't think it's endowed by the UN, and you've got to raise it, through governments and private individuals? What is it?
It's the voluntary contributions. And you can imagine when you got to raise 9 or 10 billion, and like this year, we need about 15 billion. How do you raise that amount of money? So when I arrived 4 or 5 years ago, we were raising about $15 billion a day, per day, 365 days a year. And my goal was based upon the needs of the crisis was to raise $1 million per hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're now raising $26 million per day. But, Art, and that's wonderful. But because children we're keeping people alive, 125 million people we reached last year. But we're short. And because of all the crises, the perfect storm, I want to be going the other way. I want a less budget, having to reach less people because people are being taken care of and they're feeding their own families. But we're in a really perfect storm that we've got to work ourselves through. And if we aren't careful, we could really, really destabilize the planet. It's a very fragile time right now around the world.
This is perhaps a question that's somewhat unanswerable, but how much more do you need? I guess infinite amount to be able to cover the needs of people, but realistically, how much more do you need? What's your goal as to what you would like to face? Because
of the crisis we're facing, Art, to reach 45 million people in IPC level 4, that's about $6 billion right there. It happens to be that's also the gap we have for this year because of the number of people going from 135 to 285 million people that are marching towards starvation. Obviously, it costs a lot to feed that many people. You can do the math on a per day basis. And so we're 6 billion short. I am traveling around the world right now, meeting with the United States, Germany, other major donors to explain the shortfall, what will happen if we don't raise that money, because there are no free lunches. If we don't reach these people, if we don't get that 6 billion, you're going to have destabilization of nations. And again, I can tell you, it'll be 1,000 times more than 6 billion. And if you have mass migration, it'll be at least 100 times. And I can give anecdotal, experiential data on that left and right, because we've been out there for years. And let's give you a simple example in Syria. When the Syria crisis took place, and Syrians weren't getting the food and the security they needed, they fled. Many of them ended up all over Europe. Let's say a study that just came out in Germany, 1 million Syrian refugees in Germany for 5 years, $125 billion. That's over 70 euros per person per day. Our cost in Syria, that same person who doesn't want to leave home, is 50 cents per day.
All right. How can governments help you through public policy actions? I suppose one thing obvious is to allow you access to their countries, but are there other things that governments can do through public policies to be able to help you to accomplish this task?
There are a lot, Art, hundreds and hundreds of policies in so many ways. Number one, giving us flexibility to do what we do best, minimize the red tape, et cetera, the bureaucracy, and give us unimpeded access, make certain that we got impartiality, neutrality, allow us to do our job. And at the same time, let's be practical, and how can we create sustainability? One of the things on public policy that I ask donors, just giving people food is not the long-term solution. Obviously, if it's a short-term disaster, that's one thing. But it's more complex today with long-term protracted conflicts. And so we want to come in there and create resilience and sustainability so that we're out of there in 3 or 4 years. And quite frankly, the beneficiaries, they want to learn how to fish. They don't want to be given fish. And I ask the donors, give us that flexibility to create, design the programs to not just feed people, but give them self-sufficiency, resilience, so they can withstand shocks, whether it's political, weather, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, one of the groups that I work with at Global Hope Network International is part of a thing called the Million Village Challenge, really trying to bring 1 million villages to sustainability, where they can sustain their own food and nutrition and water and that sort of thing. So just to note that. How can you make sure that food gets into the right hands, gets in the hands of the poor and the hungry versus corrupt actors?
Well, when you're spending $9-10 billion, part cash, food, et cetera, you've got to have systems in place. And we've got very robust mechanisms, check and balance systems in place that anybody would say, wow. So we know that the food goes to the intended beneficiaries. And in certain places, we'll use biometrics, whether it's with the eye, facial, or fingerprinting. It just depends on the situation and where we are each place. But the validation, the systems that we use are very robust and very successful, because our donors want to know that we're reaching as many people and the intended beneficiaries that we want to reach, and food's not being diverted. And so when we run into places, Art, where whoever might be controlling the access to the area, if they start playing games with us and not allow us to do our job, we shut it down. I've done that already in many places, because we cannot tolerate diversion or fraud or corruption. We have to be as transparent, because we're spending taxpayers' dollars, and they're like, why should I spend money over there when we got needs here? These types of logical political questions. And so the systems that we have in place are very, very effective.
Thank you for that. How can people in South Korea, Geneva, or elsewhere in the world give to the UN World Food Program? What's the method by which they can do so?
Well, there's several things they can do, from praying to contacting local leaders to number 3, yes, send money. It can be at WFP.org or share the meal, whatever it might be. And also, don't hesitate to just reach out and help somebody in your own neighborhood. It all adds up. It all makes a difference. And, our goal is to love our neighbor. And that's what we're doing. So when any child around the world is struggling, we have a moral obligation to try to help that child build a better future. So Art, anybody can help, join us, and we will move out there together to help the most that we can.
We hope that the PyeongChang Peace Forum, the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee, Global Hope Network International, and other groups can cooperate with the UN World Food Program. We really do appreciate your giving us your valuable time at $1 million an hour. That's a pretty expensive proposition. So thank you for being willing to be with us. And I only look forward to some time in person with you.
Art, thank you very much.
네, 아트린슬리 의장님과
Thank you very much to Mr. Art Lindsay and David Beasley.
세계
And in the end of their conversation, they were saying that there are so many countries around the world who are facing challenging situations and that we have a duty to help them,
문제뿐만이 아니라
not just in the arenas of food and humanitarian assistance, but it has become more and more clear that there are no challenges that a single country can solve on its own, but that there are so many global challenges that countries have to engage in cooperation to resolve together. And in that regard, this global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network would be all the more significant going forward. Thank you for the talk. Next, we'd like to hear from some other distinguished guests. We would like to hear from Choi Young-hwan, who is an ambassador for international relations for Gangwon Province, and we'd like to hear his remarks. Please welcome him to the stage with a big round of applause.
예, 안녕하십니까. 소개받은
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been introduced. I'm the ambassador for international affairs at Gangwon Province. My name is Choi Young-han.
부임한 게 1월 말이고요. 이제
I began working in my position in January, so I've been working in this capacity for about a month and a few days. So this is my first official event that I'm attending as the ambassador for international relations of Gangwon Province. The fact that this is my first official event
기쁘게 생각을 합니다.
is the PyeongChang Peace Forum
그리고 저를
is a great personal pleasure for me.
참석해 주신
And of course, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this very important gathering.
세계 인터강원 협력 네트워크라는
And
이런 단체의 발족식
I would like to
할 수 있게 돼서
say how privileged I feel that I'm giving this address at the launching ceremony of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. I'd like to thank Mr. Arthur Lindsay, chair of the U.S. Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee, and David Beasley, executive director of the UN World Food Program, as well as all the distinguished guests who are present here today. PyeongChang, which is hosting this launching ceremony, as you know, was also the host of the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. That was around the time when there was a great spirit for peace for the two Koreas. It was a very significant event that told the world of a possible peace between the two Koreas. So this is a very historic location. The fact that we are gathered here today to have the launching ceremony for the GIG Cooperation Network is a great personal pleasure for me as well.
10여 년간
Over the last 30 years or so,
멕시코
I worked at U.S., Guatemala, Mexico, Kenya, and elsewhere as a diplomat.
한국을 대표해서 외교관으로
I
근무하면서
represented the Republic of Korea in many different countries, worked with
많은 이해
NGOs, companies, various representatives of all walks of life, and they have told me their stories, and I continue to do this today. The GIG Cooperation Network, which is going to be launched today, will engage in many different activities with our partners, and I hope that if there's any way that I can offer my assistance, please let me know, and I will do so to the best of my ability.
앞서 언급됐다시피
As has been mentioned, in 2024, the Gangwon World Youth Winter Olympics is going to be held, and my hope is that the two Koreas will be able to host the World Youth Olympics together. If we can have a joint hosting of the two Koreas of the Youth Olympics, I do believe that that is going to be very symbolic and significant for peace builders and peacemakers all over the world.
위원님들께
To that end, I would like to thank all of the members of the different Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees, and I ask them for their continued supports in the future. And if you need me at any time, please let me know, and I would run to where you are to help assist your efforts towards the GIG Cooperation Network. Once again, congratulations to all of you on the launch of the GIG Cooperation Network, and I hope that we can have an impact on the Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and peace building across the world. Thank you very much.
네, 최영환 국제관계대사님.
Yes, Ambassador Choi Young-an, thank you very much for your congratulatory remarks, adding more significant meaning to today's event. Thank you. And we now have many congratulatory videos that were sent from abroad.
먼저 제가 메시지 보내주신 분들
So let me now call upon the names of those that provided us with the video message. First, we have Chairman of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network in Germany, Andres Weinland, and Chairman of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network in Switzerland, Charlie Lamento, Chairperson of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network in the Philippines, Grace Hammond, and Chairperson Irene Squillaci from the Cooperation Network in Bolivia, and Co-Chairman Dan Shaham of SHADE, Chairman Jonsha Munklujagar of the Cooperation Network in Mongolia, and Chairman Rabinder Sachdev, Chairman of the GIG in India, and Chairperson Ibu Hana of GIG Cooperation Network in Indonesia, and last but not least, Chairperson Calvin Chua of the GIG in Singapore. Let us all watch their videos.
Honorable Governor and guests of the PyeongChang Peace Forum. Greetings from the German Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee. It is an honor for us and a pleasure to support the efforts of peace and reconciliation in the Korean Peninsula from Germany. Germany has a history of separation and reunification. In the coming years, we hope to be able to learn from you and with you even more about this today and a so important topic of peace and reconciliation. We congratulate your PyeongChang Legacy Foundation and all who work diligently to make this global initiative possible, wishing you success and patience, because that is what it will take. We from the German committee, just getting organized and starting, want to support and be with you and fully be behind this endeavor. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this historic movement and this historic moment. Hopefully, until we meet again in person, as we overcome this pandemic, our wishes for you are be courageous, be patient, and be prayerful, because that is what it took at the end to make the Berlin Wall and the German Wall fall. Thank you.
Greetings, PyeongChang Peace Forum delegates, Honorable Gangwon Province officials, and His Excellency Choi Moon-san, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charlie Lamento, and I am the permanent representative to the United Nations for the Global Network International and the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, based in Geneva, Switzerland, also known as the City of Peace, where 193 nations have appointed their representatives to live and work at the United Nations to advance policies, international laws that make this world a better place. I am very excited about the inauguration of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee, and I wish I was in South Korea with you now to kick off this very special event. It is with great hope that we as peacemakers from the international community can play an essential role in continuing the momentum of peace, reconciliation, and prosperity for South and North Koreans. That will also send a message of hope and encouragement to other nations where similar conflicts exist today. As chairman of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee for Switzerland, I see the committee as a catalyst and facilitator for peace, where we can build an international community of committed peacemakers who are willing to share their time, expertise, finances, so that the peace, reconciliation, and prosperity can become a reality for South and North Koreans, including building a coalition of people and organizations that have a special connection to South or North Korea. We will host public diplomacy initiatives in Geneva that promote cooperation with Gangwon Province to advance peace building and reconciliation activities that involve sporting events, tourism, economic development, and peace-building training, including events that also address other countries where conflict exists so they can share their knowledge and best practices that will contribute to the peace-building process on the Korean Peninsula. As Gangwon Province, also known as the City of Peace, has become a very special place, a sort of holy ground because of its geopolitical and geographical significance. In the lead up to the 2024 Winter Youth Olympics and the 2027 Special Olympics World Summer Games, the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, in partnership with the Multilateral Diplomacy Division of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, designed a unique 2-week training program in 2021 to equip Korean stakeholders and beneficiaries with the skills and knowledge necessary to build on the landmark diplomatic accomplishments of the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. This training program covers the essential skills necessary to generate momentum for sustainable peace initiatives, sports and tourism diplomacy, international law, and hospitality. The combination of these fields will enable participants to promote the 2024 Winter Youth Olympics and 2027 Olympic World Summer Games as an opportunity for culture and sporting exchange and position it as a next step in securing sustainable peace on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to join you in this peace-building experiment, and I wish you successful and a memorable PyeongChang Peace Forum that will encourage and motivate all who attend this event to get involved in this life-changing work. Peace to our world, peace to our nations, and peace and prosperity to our...
This is wishing to congratulate our friends in the Public Diplomacy Committee for this tenacity and faithful commitment to peace and settlement of disputes in the Korean Peninsula. This cannot be more relevant, especially as we take advantage of the opportunities of profound lessons we learned because of COVID. This is one of the best times to continue the vision, and the committee can successfully make this happen precisely because of the people that are in the committee. And I believe that this vision can be achieved by harnessing this wonderful time and lesson in our history that we have learned from COVID. Harnessing the academe for its work in making sure that the next generation of our people will inherit the legacy of our public advocacy. Faith communities serving notice that there is an international constituency in pushing for peace and unity that the world, not only Korea, needs at this time in our lives. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Hi, my name is Maria Irene Squillaci from Santa Cruz, Bolivia. I am an advisor for many political leaders in the region of Latin America, working in over 12 countries with congressmen and leaders in government. I have experience in international relations as well as in everything that has to do with public policy advising. It is a pleasure for me to be able to address and to talk about the Inter-Gangwon international cooperation. This organization that really is becoming a committee that is seeking for peace is something that is very interesting for me to be a part of and to help and to reach out to our leaders in Bolivia, to local governmental leaders as well as national leaders in order to establish a deep connection between Bolivia and South Korea for peace and prosperity. I have experience here as well working with Korean organizations all over the world, especially in Bolivia with the universities that there are here, and also with several missions that come as well to do social work and to help. I think it is a great opportunity to establish deeper bonds between these two countries and to help overall improve the quality of life of our citizens. I am very interested in cooperating in anything I can to help the Inter-Gangwon committee be a success. Thank you very much.
Shalom. Greetings from Jerusalem to our friends and partners and colleagues in the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee. I send you greeting from Jerusalem, the city of peace. And yes, we call upon the same thing that you wish, peace here and now. Here in Jerusalem, and me as the founder of JADE, we aim to bring about better possibilities via technology in assisting those in need. And as we know, there are many people throughout the world in places of conflict, natural and man-made disasters that need it. So we believe in cooperation. And therefore, it gives me great pleasure to congratulate you in establishing this global network of supporting NGOs that work together to the same goal as you, bringing peace, aid, and better technology to this world to assist each other. So I wish you all the best in the Peace Forum. I wish you all the best in every undertaking that you will initiate, and all the best from Jerusalem. Thank you.
Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation.
I would like to extend my deepest congratulations to all of you on the launch of the Inter-Gangwon, the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network, as well as all the committees. I'm greeting you from Mongolia. I am Munk Jagal. I was born and bred here in Mongolia. I have visited the Republic of Korea several times, and I've always felt that the Gangwon province is the most beautiful, with the most delicious food, and the most hospitable people. I hope that going forward, the two Koreas, Gangwon Province and Mongolia, can become one so that we can have beautiful fruit come to all of us. And I do hope that the mainstream society in Mongolia can closely cooperate with all of you in the fields of politics, economy, art, culture, and sports. And I will do my best to that regard. Thank you.
Dear all, greetings from India. I congratulate you for holding this Peace Forum, the Honorable Governor, the Honorable Mayor, and the Honorable President of the PyeongChang Legacy Foundation. My name is Rabinder Sachdev. I am President of Image India Institute, a new age think tank with mission to promote imagination, innovations, and peace across cultures. And we work in public diplomacy and campaigns across America, Europe, and of course with Korea and in India. Honorable gathering. There's so many conflicts, serious challenges, and stress all around us that the most important, urgent thing the world of today needs is motivation and hope. Therefore, we have launched the Lemonade Party with a mission to boost innovation, motivation, and hope in personal, social, and global affairs. We are not a political party. Our motto is, when life hands you a lemon, make lemonade, which is a common saying in the West often, that when you face a trouble or a troublesome situation, do something, anything, and get over that situation. Make lemonade. Lemonade Party is an integral part of our global Live and Let Live campaign. Our background with Korea, we've been working with Korea for the past over 10 years, multiple delegations, political, cultural, social, educational, leadership training programs and such. One significant achievement we've achieved on policy side is the issuing of a commemorative stamp in honor of the legendary Prince of Ayodhya, Queen Hwang-hok of Korea, by the government of India, which was completely our initiative, and the government of India took notice of that and issued the stamp. What we are planning with GICC in India, we've set up a committee. We have some ex-military generals, some ex-ambassadors, some fashion activists, fashion designer activists, spiritual leaders, amongst others. We will hold discussion to plan out what else. We are also planning to create subcommittees on sports, on youth, and academics. One step that we are thinking is also to arrange root art or souvenirs from the birth village of Mahatma Gandhi and send them to the Peace Forum 24 so that they can be displayed there to spread Gandhi's message of peace and non-violence during PPF 24 and Winter Olympics. We also have two suggestions on Inter-Gangwon cooperation. One, on sidelines of 2024 forum, we propose to hold the world's largest lemonade party, largest number of people drinking a glass of lemonade at the same time. Get that into the Guinness Book of World Records. It will create awareness, buzz, and media curiosity. Also, here, can you get lemons from Gangwon, though in the north? That would add an amazing twist to this possibility. And lastly, to promote Gandhiji's peace and non-violence during 2024 forum, once again, as I said, we could arrange art souvenirs from the roots of Gandhiji, which can be displayed during the forum on the sidelines or at a garden of peace that Gangwon can set up during that time. I wish the Congress all success and I look forward to the outcomes. Thank you.
Your Excellency Governor Moon Soon Choi, Dr. Art Lindsay, co-chairman of PyeongChang Peace Forum, Reverend Lee So-hyung, chairman of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network, and our respectables, ladies and gentlemen. Peace greetings to all of you from Surabaya, Indonesia. It is a country of archipelago and unity of diversity. I'm Hana Amalia. I'm more known as Mama Hana from House of Love Foundation. We have served the poor and the marginalized groups for more than 30 years and found out that compassion service for the poor has bridged social gap, ideological and racial gaps, which cause so many problems in all countries. By serving together, we can develop peace, love, unity, and harmony. And for the last 20 years, this service has developed into reconciliations, and we started models of reconciliation not only nationally but also internationally. I thank the committee for giving me such a privilege to give my congratulatory speech in this auspicious moment during the launching of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. I was in this forum several years, and I was privileged to speak in this forum and also to the university students, and I witnessed great achievement had been made. It is my strong desire that one day we may host this forum, Inter-Gangwon Inter-Korea Cooperation, and between Indonesia and Korea in Indonesia, because Indonesia has great relationship with both South and North Korea. What is more, our president has also been appointed as global peacemaker of the G20 countries. As a closing statement, we do hope that one day we can help organize Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee for Peace Forum in Indonesia. Be peaceful our world, be united our nations, and be prosperous our people. Thank you. God bless you all.
Greetings. My name is Calvin Schwab from Singapore. First of all, a big congratulations on the inauguration of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee. This is a very important initiative, and I'm deeply honored to be part of the committee as a national facilitator. For the past 70 years, not only was Korea separated, Gangwon Province, together with cities along the borders, were also artificially separated. If cities and regions are the engines of the global economy, I believe they can also be beacons of peace and diplomacy. So it is with this belief that we at Chosun Exchange piloted the Gangwon Development Initiative back in 2020, a research and development roadmap project for the Northern Gangwon Province. We believe a new form of engagement is crucial in sectors that allow for joint cooperation, such as tourism and sustainability sectors. So how can we actually design frameworks and projects that not only enable dialogues for a diplomatic restart, but also plant the seed for a post-pandemic economic recovery of the region? I look forward to the conversations, exchanges, and projects at the GICC in establishing connections between both sides of Gangwon Province. Have a great PyeongChang Peace Forum.
Please give them a big round of applause. These were the co-chairs of Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees around the world. They have sent us their words of encouragement and appreciation. I think that if we all dream together, the dream becomes bigger and could be realizable. all the more. The fact that the chairs of the different committees around the world have shown us their encouragement and support bodes well for the future of the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. Now I'd like to hear from the Secretary General of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network for his plans and an announcement of the future projects in store for the network.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. I am Yoo Ha-jong. I'm the Secretary General of the network. I'm going to provide you with some announcements, and these would not be necessarily called new announcements, but I think that this would be a way for us to refresh what we have heard thus far. I would like to tell you about the project plans that we have in store for the network, but before that, I would like to introduce the persons that we want to thank. Most of all, these are the two people who have provided some substantial help to our network. Of course, our beloved Governor Choi Moon-soon of Gangwon Province, thank you very much. And our new hope for Gangwon Province, Kwak Do-young, the Speaker of the Gangwon Provincial Assembly, thank you very much. Next, I would also like to mention some distinguished guests who have also provided us with their tireless support, but who are unable to be with us today because of COVID-19. Art Lindsay, Chair of the IGCC US, and Executive Director David Beasley of the UN World Food Program, who is also a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, who have given us their congratulatory remarks and very insightful comments in their conversations. I would also like to thank the Ambassador for International Relations for Gangwon Province, Mr. Choi Young-han, for giving us his congratulatory remarks and also pledging his support to Inter-Gangwon Network. To Andrea Zweland of Germany, Grace Jamin of the Philippines, Charlie Lamento of Switzerland, Irene Squillaci of Bolivia, Dan Shaham of Israel, Joshua Munkjangal of Mongolia, Robin Dar Sartsdebo of India, Ibu Hana of Indonesia, Calvin Chua of Singapore. Thank you very much to all of the chairs of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees around the world who have sent us their congratulatory remarks by video. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of the staff and the different people and all of the stakeholders of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees around the world who have sent us their support so tirelessly. This network is founded to encourage private sector cooperation with Gangwon Province, and we will continue to promote development of Gangwon Province and enhance its standing globally around the world, while cooperating to expand support base for peace and unification of the Korean Peninsula, promote cooperation between the two Koreas and Gangwon-do Province. We are a public diplomacy platform established as a non-profit under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. There are currently 15 Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees around the world, including the United States, and we are continuously expanding on this membership. Let me brief you on the projects that we have in store for 2022. First of all, from March 28th to April 8th, we will visit the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees in countries such as the US, Switzerland, and Israel. We will visit Washington, D.C., New York, Geneva, and Jerusalem. And in the US, we will first of all meet with Art Lindsay, the head of the U.S. Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee. We would also have a meeting with the U.S. National Prayer Breakfast in the Cedars, also with the DPRK representative to the UN and members of the World Evangelical Alliance, influential U.S. leaders. For the promotion of public diplomacy for Gangwon-do Province, we want to ultimately impact the U.S. foreign policy so that we can have more exchange between the two Koreas and between the Koreas and Gangwon Province. In Geneva, Switzerland, we're going to first of all meet with the chair of the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee in Switzerland, Charlie Lamento, who is an attorney and expert in international law. We will also meet with Bernd Canton, who is a member of parliament of the Swiss Union, who is also part of UNITAR. We will also meet with representatives of the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, to discuss success measures for the Youth Winter Olympics in 2024. In Israel, we're going to engage in measures to connect the Abraham Accords or the Middle East Peace Accords with the Korean Peninsula, especially with the two Koreas and Gangwon Province, and also try to engage in partnership diplomacy to create a breakthrough for peace between Israel, Palestine, and the Korean Peninsula, which are still the two major conflict regions in the world. We'll work with diplomats in Israel and also visit to the Knesset, the Middle East Peace Accords, caucus, and also visit the NGO known as JADE. Our second project will last from June 20th to the 27th. We will invite Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committees to Gangwon. The countries would be the US, Switzerland, Germany, Israel, India, Singapore, Peru, Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Bolivia, Mongolia, the Philippines, Brazil, and East Timor. We will also host an Inter-Gangwon conference during this time frame to promote cooperation between the two Koreas and Gangwon Province, but also among our partner nations in economy, trade, culture, arts, and sports. Some of the major programs that we are thinking of hosting in the Inter-Gangwon Conference is a meeting with the president, visits to the DMZ, and also Gangwon Province Korean War Memorial event. The goal of this conference and these tours and the visits would be to engage in more openness and cooperation between the two Koreas and Gangwon Province, and also try to create a diplomatic environment for the success of the 2024 Youth Winter Olympic Games. Next, I would like to talk about the two landmark projects that we are thinking of launching in the second half of this year. First, we have the initiative of a city of coexistence between South Korea and North Korea. This is going to be a long-term project that we want to host in Gosong, in the DMZ area. We want to foster more exchange between the two Koreas and Gangwon Province, and to do that, we have to try to create a peace zone where the people of the two Koreas and the world can engage in more exchange in. We will designate a DMZ zone in Gosong as the peace zone. We are imagining a free trade zone and a free pass zone and a free coexistence zone. This project will make use of cooperation with the Chosun Exchange in Singapore and the Global Future Council on the Korean Peninsula at the World Economic Forum, as well as UN organizations. This Gosong Peace Zone would hopefully be the host of the UNITAR Institute for Training and Research and the UNPKO Training Center. We are also going to engage in more diplomatic efforts to try to launch the Inter-Gangwon Initiative that is similar and has been inspired by the Great Tumen Initiative. Lastly, to realize this project that I just mentioned, the coexistence city, we would work tirelessly to try to create this Inter-Gangwon issue and have it chosen as an official agenda at the UN level. Exchange between the two Koreas and Gangwon Province would be a very important matter for peacekeeping in the Korean Peninsula. Therefore, having this as an official item on the agenda for the UN will be very important in capturing the global attention. In the second half of this year, we are going to focus on this assignment and build a large, robust support base so that we can have exchange and cooperation between the two Koreas and Gangwon Province as an official UN agenda, possibly install a liaison office, and also at least have some efforts for a peace coexistence zone in Gosong, host some exchange between the two Koreas and Gangwon Province. So hopefully, in the second half of this year, we can have the UN Inter-Gangwon Initiative become realized on the Korean Peninsula. And through this, the GIG Cooperation Network will be a very symbolic network. These are not easy goals, but I think that if we engage in more cooperation with Gangwon Province and our partner nations, I think we can reap a good outcome. I hope that the GIG Cooperative Network builds the capacity of Gangwon Province and also contribute to peace and unification of the Korean Peninsula. And hopefully this will also help Gangwon Province to successfully host the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. To that end, I ask for your continued support and attention. Thank you.
네, 사무총장님께서 앞으로 추진해야 할
Yes, Secretary General, thank you very much for giving us information on the future plans. I can see that there's a lot that we have to achieve going forward, but we do need to achieve all this. And with cooperation, I do have conviction that we will make this happen. Once again, thank you very much for your words.
좀 특별한
Next is a very special event, a special performance. It is to wish for the success of the GIG Cooperation Network and also usher in a hopeful future. So we will all be flying paper airplanes. I'm sure that you all see the yellow paper airplanes. Please raise the airplanes. And I would like to kindly ask our distinguished guests on the stage for this event. I would like to call upon your names. First, Speaker Kwak Do-young,
대사님,
Ambassador Choi Young-hwan,
이사장님,
Chairman Lee Soo-young,
장관님,
Advisor Lee Young-gil,
이사님,
Director Lee Sang-jin, Secretary General Yoo Hwa-jong. Please join us on the stage.
네, 저희가 마음 같아서는 사실 지금
We hope that we, of course, want to have all of the members of the audience to join us on the stage, but due to circumstances, we cannot make that happen, so I do ask for your understanding. But we also have distinguished guests that traveled afar. So in the order of those that traveled the farthest, I would like to ask you to join us on the stage as well. First, from Cheonwon, Chairman Han Gi-ryong. From Hwacheon, Chairman Yuk Byung-ryuk. From Chuncheon, Chairman Ji Tae-sung. Chairman Lee Jong-gun of Sokcho. And Chairman Lee Jong-min of Taebaek. Please join us on the stage.
네, 호명되신 분들께서
For those of you that I called upon your names, please join us on the stage for this performance. I'm sure that our audience and all of our distinguished guests all have the same goal. We do want peace, and we all want to achieve this grand vision, and I hope we can fly this paper airplane all together. On the count of 3, please fly your planes. So at a count of 3, please fly the paper airplanes. Are you all ready?
제가 카운트하겠습니다. 그리고 셋 하면
And also, on the count of 3, please fly your airplanes and followed by a big round of applause. 1, 2, 3.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for joining us.
바깥이었으면 참 좋겠습니다만 실내장이라는 게 좀
It's quite unfortunate that we're not outdoors, but it was wonderful to see all of the planes flying in this venue. Of course, we did that here, but I hope that the plane flies afar so that this message of peace will disseminate across the world. We'll now take a commemorative photo to remember this event. Unfortunately, we all have our face masks on, but big smiles, please.
카메라를 향해서
Please face the camera.
네, 사진 촬영 진행하겠습니다.
Let us engage in this photo op all together.
네, 여러분 지금 사진 찍고 계신 분들은 앞으로도
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask for your further efforts to promote peace around the world, and a big round of applause, please. Thank you very much.
네, 사진 촬영이 끝났고요.
Thank you. That ends the photo op. You may now return to your seats.
네, 감사드립니다.
Thank you very much.
네, 자리로 오시도록 하겠습니다.
Thank you. You may now return to your seats.
네, 저희 그럼 이것으로 세계
With this, we would like to conclude the launching ceremony for the Global Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Network. Thank you very much for joining us despite the cold weather.
드리겠고요. 또 온라인으로 함께
And also to all of our online participants, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
전체 사진 촬영이요. 네, 아무래도 이 순간 전체 사진 촬영이 필요하신 것 같아서 전체 사진 촬영을 지금 제안해 주셨는데요. 객석에 앉아
We would
계신
now
분들
like to take once again a group photo with all of those in the audience as well. So kindly join us in this group photo.
와우. 와.
Located in the northeast of South Korea, Gangwon-do is bounded by the ocean on one side and other Korean provinces on the other. This charming region, filled with the beauty of nature, offers both mountainous and sea landscapes for a multitude of activities during different seasons of the year. Today, we chose 3 cities to visit in Gangwon-do and can't wait to introduce them to you. Gyeongpo Beach. Gangneung is the largest coastal city in Gangwon Province. During the summer, it is one of those places where everyone wants to enjoy some of the best beaches of the country. No matter if you walk north or south through gorgeous beaches one after another, you will be followed by the infinite white sands and emerald waters. Here, the stress and anxiety of everyday life leaves room for dreams and happiness, which makes everything possible. Gyeongpo Beach is probably the most popular beach at the east coast of South Korea. Here, people enjoy different outdoor activities, or just spend hours sunbathing on the beach. It is an especially appealing vacation spot as the beach is situated between the ocean and Gyeongpo Lake. If you feel like stretching your legs, you can rent a bike and enjoy the lovely bike path that surrounds the lake. It is a fun activity that we enjoyed until late. If you decide to stay in this area for several days, Lee Kai Sandpine Resort is situated a few pine trees away. A lot of people come to visit this place to relax and feel the flavor of the Hawaiian atmosphere. It is no coincidence that Lee Kai means shining ocean in Hawaiian. This resort is well known for its huge golf fields in the heart of Gangneung, and it has 12 conference rooms, which can accommodate up to 800 people. Sagunjin Beach. Sagunjin Beach is the most romantic beach of the coastal area. I know we've said that you can't take it easy in Gangwon-do, But this is the moment where you can impress your loved one. Don't be lazy and get ready for your date by bringing some delicious snacks and renting some of the loveliest picnic sets in the nearby shops. You'll feel like the happiest couple on the planet with the memory that neither of you are ready to forget. Songgyeojang. After enjoying the coastal area, it is time to experience ancient Korea by visiting Songgyeojang House. It is a very well-preserved traditional Hanok house of noble family constructed 300 years ago. It is hard to believe that the descendants still live in this house to this day. Surrounded by pine trees, it remains intact in harmony with the beautiful natural environment. The wooden bridge, stretched out over the pond, used to be an inspirational location for poets. Today, it is one of the most popular attractions in Gangneung, Gangneung Market. There is no visit to Gangwon-do without testing its local food. Besides local restaurants, Gangneung Market is a great place to taste some food from Gangwon-do. For food lovers, it is a must-visit place. And as you probably already know, we love delicious food, especially while traveling. Don't worry if you feel lost with all the choices offered to you. Just pick a local who is eating what looks like the most delicious food and copy whatever they order. Trust us, you can't go wrong with this. Anmok Beach. From the multitude of amazing beaches that Gangneung can offer, Anmok Beach is definitely worth a visit. It is here that you will find a popular Gangneung coffee street. Over 30 unique beachfront cafes let you drink perfectly brewed beverages while enjoying incredible sea views. Overall, in Gangneung, we mostly stayed at St. John's Hotel. Since it has fabulous conference rooms, which can accommodate 1,000 people, it has also hosted famous personalities like the President of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, and Ivanka Trump. Located right in front of the ocean, it provides you with a stunning view of the surroundings. The infinity pool on the rooftop was our favorite. The blue water from the sea merging with the water of the pool gives the illusion to be surrounded by the ocean. PyeongChang is today a world-famous county in Gangwon-do, as it hosted the Winter Olympics in 2018. With an honorable number of 17 medals and 5 gold, South Korea achieved its best performance in the history of the Winter Olympic Games. The official hotel of the Winter Olympics was the Alpensia Ski Resort, as it has the biggest conference rooms hosting 2,000 people. Today, it provides the perfect environment to enjoy leisure sports during all seasons. In winter, people come here mainly for skiing, but in summer, it creates a peaceful place to relax in nature and enjoy some outdoor activities. The resort also hosted some of the sports events in its stadiums, like ski jumping. You can go to the top of the Alpensia Ski Jumping Center if you want to experience how the athletes felt before they jumped. Woljongsa Temple at Odensan Mountain. Situated on the beautiful Odensan Mountain, Woljongsa Temple is the place where you find peace and enlightenment in the solitude of nature. It is a spiritual healing experience where you will breathe the history and heritage of one of the main religions of South Korea. It is also a foreigner-friendly temple stay that breaks down the barriers of language and achieves mutual understanding among all humankind. Sky Ranch Hanulmokjang. Sky Ranch is a lovely sheep farm in South Korea. The ranch is so beautiful that it became a popular tourist attraction in Gangwon-do. These cute, lucky animals enjoy grazing in the vast fields and are used to interacting with humans. After hanging around with them, a tractor brought us to the top of the hill in style, surrounded by a multitude of windmills in perfect harmony with the beauty of nature. It offers a magical experience that we weren't prepared for. Finally, we finished our day with a lovely picnic in the middle of the river, enjoying their delicious, fresh, farm-made yogurt. Jonggangwon, Traditional Korean Food Cultural Experience Center. After enjoying tons of delicious food across the country, it is time for us to learn how to cook it. PyeongChang provides traditional cooking programs where visitors can immerse a little bit more in Korean culture and learn the way their food is made. They even grow their own ingredients, which gives this place a lot of charm. I bet you've never seen a huge collection of pots right in front of a house. Yes, fermented paste and sauces like gochujang, the red pepper paste, or doenjang, the bean paste, are very important in Korean cuisine. Ari Hills. Now that you've taken some rest and enjoyed the beach, it is time for the fun part of the trip. Jongson is another beautiful place in Gangwon-do. but it is the outdoor activities that we enjoyed the most. Ari Hill's Skywalk is a glass observation deck which provides you with an incredible view of the Donggang River. Bringing to mind the shape of the Korean peninsula, this magical landscape is often called the Grand Canyon of South Korea. You will have the amazing feeling of walking on the clouds from the edge of the cliff. Ari Hills also has the longest zipwire in Asia. If you want to spice up your trip to Gangwon, this is the perfect opportunity. You will be flying like a bird between the valleys at 100 kilometers per hour, an experience you'll never forget. Once down on the ground, you will have the option to fully enjoy Donggang River by grabbing a paddle and riding a boat. The beauty of this place made it popular for rafting, with steep cliffs on one side and banks of pebbles on the other. The picturesque landscape will make you forget to paddle. We had a lot of fun jumping from the boat and letting the river bring us to the destination point, Samtan Art Mine. It is time to slow down a bit and visit an impressive Jongson creation, which highlights both the area's rich history of mining and fresh modern art. It used to be a very busy place, employing around 3,000 people due to the high demand for coal. After shutting its doors in 2001, local artists gave this place another life. It became the perfect playground for urban explorers and graffiti artists. Today, Samtan Art Mine is a stunning complex that would be scary to visit alone at night. Alpine Coaster. Haiwon Ski Resort is the biggest resort in Gangwon, with around 1,900 rooms and 43 conference rooms, which can host over 2,000 people. During summer, instead of ski slopes, this place is covered with thousands of flowers. It has plenty of activities to discover, like an open-air water park, so you don't have to go far to enjoy your day. But our favorite was the Alpine Coaster attraction, which makes you appreciate the daisy field through a completely different angle. This place is huge and surrounded by beautiful nature, so even when we weren't lucky with the weather, we had a lot of fun exploring the surroundings. Now you know about some of the best places in Gangwon, where you can enjoy the coastal area, mountains, and some fun activities. However, Gangwon is a huge province with lots of places to visit during different seasons of the year. We are looking forward to going back and letting you discover more about Gangwon. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see each other on the next one.
강원도 금강산 1만 2천 봉 할망광자 유정사 법당 뒤에 칠성난 도두보고 팔자에 없는 아들 딸 나달라고 석달 열흘 녹음에 없는 아들 딸 나달라고 정성을 말고 다 관객니 외로이 난 사람 괄세를 말아 정성을 말고 다 관객니 외로이 난 사람 괄세를 말아.
Clean Highlands, 700 meters above sea level, the bearer of happiness. The positive energy found here engages all senses, giving life to the body from head to toe, bringing peace to the heart and soul. Quick and close, PyeongChang approaches. As we run to embrace PyeongChang, in this very moment right now. A snow-covered village, a 1,000-year-old forest, leads us to a new world in awe, leaving the secular world behind. Here, the meeting of a dramatically portrayed goblin, as someone gains insight to understand the past, present, and the future. Buckwheat flowers that displayed freshness under the sun glows white with the delicate moonlight. At PyeongChang, where all seasons come in different colors, presenting the vastness that exists within scenery, every photo taken becomes memorable. Enjoy the scent therapy at PyeongChang. Satisfy your sense of smell, not just the vision. the clean highlands where warm sunlight meets becomes a heavenly garden full of flowers giving off a unique fragrance. In every breath, the fragrance of flowers covers your body, washing off the fatigue of city life, becoming a memory engraved in the mind. After feasting your senses of sight and smell, open your ears now and listen to the sound of PyeongChang. Beautiful snow scene of the sound of the wind that freely travels in and out of Baekdu-daegan. Following the footsteps of the sound of nature, listen to the magical harmony of the 80 wind chimes hanging from an octagonal 9-story stone pagoda in Uljeongsa. The sound of PyeongChang, a sound of clean nature and sincere life, a symphony of healing that rejuvenates the lost sensibilities. "700 meters above sea level, known to be the optimal height for an ideal biorhythm, delicious food from ingredients grown in PyeongChang pleases the sense of taste. Hanwoo, premium Korean beef, comes from cattle relaxed and fed in an open field. Hwangtae, a dried pollock, gets tastier after freezing and thawing in the cold wind and snow. You can also find trout that live in cold and clean water, and vegetables grown in Odaesan with thick forest and pure and natural water. Hangadari yaksu that provides a taste of nature with a kick. The healthy, happy taste of PyeongChang comes from Baekdu-daegan and its clean and pure water, the source of the Han River. Giving rise to healing and happy foods that satisfies the appetites and contents the heart. If you are tired of a cold and heartless life, there is a journey of touch found only in PyeongChang, cozy and warm, just like a mother's embrace. At Snow Festival, a white blanket of snow covers the land, warming and comforting you as it wraps around the soul. At the Summer Hunter Festival, you will be reminded of your childhood splashing water in the creek. At the Trout Festival at the riverside in winter, under the thick ice, you will feel the vigor and life of the trouts. Odaesan Mountain Culture Festival, reflecting the Buddhist culture, will allow you to look into your heart and grow. Coming into contact with PyeongChang will serve you with gentle happiness that cannot be found in city life. PyeongChang, the cradle for skiing in Korea, becoming the mecca of winter sports worldwide since the hosting of the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. Even in seasons without snow, the healing of PyeongChang that shakes off the stress of everyday life continues on. Paragliding gives you the view of the world beneath your feet. Whitewater rafting and kayaking across rough currents invites you to experience primitive nature. Exciting exploration of the fantastical limestone caves, and enjoying the view of the beautiful watercourses of Dong River through zip lines can invigorate and rejuvenate. Spend the night with your families and friends, with the forest and rivers that preserve the clean, primitive ecology. The moon and the stars shine throughout the night as guardians, sending a message of comfort. The wooden paths in the quiet temples of the mountain helps us find who we are. A journey of healing in PyeongChang restores the forgotten passion for our lives. PyeongChang, is where peace began. Going through the frozen past and the heated present, we are taking a new step towards the future that will make hearts glow. PyeongChang will present new energy and peace in the lives of those who step upon it.
Bonjour, moi relais Sébastien. Moi gagné 10 ans ma vivre en Haïti. Moi lever à 7 heures chaque matin pour moi aller à l'école. Pour moi aller à l'école chaque matin, moi marcher environ 1 heure de temps. Moi ta remè fini un bon médecin, l'aime fini avec l'école classique moi, pour me capable servir monde qui malade dans le pays moi. Pour me capable venir un bon médecin, moi dois étudier en pile en pile. Moi aimé jouer avec tes amis yo dans l'école là. Mais il est très difficile pour aller à l'école à pied. Moi toujours gain dormir chaque matin dans la classe là. Mais moi pas de problème. Parce que gain bus pour transporter moi à l'école là. À cause bus là, moi viens étudier en pile et moi jouer avec tes amis moi yo. Moi pas dormir dans la classe là encore parce que moi t'a remis venir un bon médecin. Merci un pile Koika.
네, 여러분 안녕하십니까?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to PyeongChang Peace Forum 2022.
진행을 맡은
I am Kim Min-hee and I will be your MC for Special Agenda Session 1. It's very cold outside today, but despite the cold weather, thank you very much for coming to join us. And also to our online participants, my sincere gratitude to you all for your participation today.
2024년 강원 동계
In 2024, the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics will be held here in the province, and the special agenda session will be truly a special session that will deal with the Gangwon 2024 Winter Youth Olympic Games and Inter-Korean peace promotion measures.
인사이트 얻어가시기를
I hope that you can find today's session useful. And let me now introduce you to our moderator. We have Professor PyeongChang of Gyeonggi University Graduate School of Politics. He will be assisting us with the discussions.
Yes, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Park Sang-chul. I'm a professor at Gyeonggi University. The PyeongChang Peace Forum has begun today, and it's going to end for the next, go on for the next 2 days. I believe all of the sessions are, of course, important, but this particular session would involve a lot of food for thought, and it would invite much discussions, and that's why, as a moderator, I believe that we can draw important conclusions from this session. So, hopefully, we will have active discussions, and if time allows, we'll also entertain questions from the floor. The theme of this session is the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics and measures to promote peace, the two Koreas. Yesterday, the Beijing Winter Olympics came to a close, and in 2024, we're also going to see the Winter Youth Olympics being hosted here in PyeongChang and Wonsan. Hopefully, there is the possibility that we could have a joint hosting of the two Koreas. And in fact, it was with that in mind that we have named the Winter Youth Olympics the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. This location, which will host the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, will be a way for us to raise the Olympic spirit high, because it's the last remaining divided country on Earth. So if we can have a joint hosting of the Winter Youth Olympics, that would be very meaningful. And I understand the IOC is also very much interested in the outcome of the Olympics. I know that today we have many people with us today. The 3 speakers are going to be discussing their thoughts, and we also have 1 discussant. I'm going to introduce them all in turn. I'd like to ask you for your warm applause. Our first presenter is Resident Representative Bernhard Zeiger of the Hans Seidel Foundation here in Korea. And I would like to say that our next speaker is Chairman Kim Kyung-sung of the South and North Korea Sports Exchange Association. He has been a very pivotal and instrumental person in this session. Our next speaker is going to present by video. This is Magmed Magdiv, who is the chairperson of the Gold Mongoose Foundation. He's very well known, but he's based in Ukraine, and so because of the COVID-19 quarantine regulations, and right now the fact that Ukraine is going through something of a huge geopolitical challenge made it very difficult for him to attend. So we're going to give him an applause now, but we will see him by video. We also have a discussant who will be joining the panel later on. And I would say that this person has a lot of knowledge regarding the current political situation in Ukraine, as he was the former ambassador to Ukraine for the Republic of Korea. Today, we would like to talk about the Winter Youth Olympics, peace in the two Koreas, but because Ukraine is also a very important matter here, I think that we have a very excellent person joining us, former Ambassador Lee Yang-gu. We'd now like to hear first from our first panelist, Representative Bernhard Zeiger of the Hans Seidel Foundation. Please give him a big round of applause.
Okay, hello everybody, and I hope, presentation is there, perfect. Now, you will ask yourself, what does that big man tell me about sports? I have to admit, I'm not a sportsman, but I hope I can tell you something about sports and civilian exchange in Germany in the time of division and how it relates to Korea. with the background that I worked since 20 years now also with North Koreans and North Korea, and though I would not like to call myself an expert, because nobody is an expert of North Korea, it's so difficult to get into their mind, but we have some maybe interesting experience there. You know this picture. This is in Gangneung, and 4 years ago, and there was this wonderful picture with the South Korean and North Korean flags together in the Olympic Village. And you know all these pictures, but admittedly, all of what was done there is gone. It's a pipe dream. It didn't happen. Isn't that sad for you? I don't know. I guess there's so many young people here. Some of you will be part in the Youth Winter Olympics in 2024, I hope at least. How do you want to organize it and hope that the North Koreans come when they simply refuse to come since April 2019? No more meetings, expressed commands by the leader not to talk to the South Koreans. It's so difficult. It's a pipe dream. On the other hand, I want to stress here, sports is probably one of the most important avenues for dealing with North Korea. Not because they like you so much or they like South Gangwon so much, though that would be nice, but because they like the recognition coming with sports. That's for them really important. So sports is a very good way to interact, but how can we do it? And let me look back at the German case. And even for the beginning, I want to look a little bit back at sports as a political tool. And that's, for me, I think, very important. Yesterday, Thomas Bach said again, sports is not about politics, it's about overcoming borders and meeting together. It's a lie. It's maybe a white lie, but it's not true. It was never about that. Sports was always extremely political. And it was political for the whole Greek states. They fought about Olympics. Some said Olympics is a sacred truth, so people don't fight each other, they just compete peacefully. At the same time, others tried to conquer Olympia to have it in their territory. And in the classic Olympic Games, there's this wonderful instance of Nero, the emperor of Rome, who went to Olympia, and he became, I think, in the running of the chariots, he became the first place because nobody dared to win over him. And a year or two later, when he was killed, his memory was erased from Olympia. And all of you know certainly very well the case of my country, Germany, which had this absolutely spectacular but shameful spectacle of the 1936 Berlin Olympics, which was the most political. And for the Koreans especially, you will immediately think of the marathon, which was also political because the Korean runner was registered as Japanese. So it is about politics, and we have to admit this. And the same was the truth in Germany. In 1962, in the divided Germany, the Free German Youth got the explicit command by the Communist Party to show the superiority over West Germany in the Olympics as a sports political goal. And from 1952 on, there was this famous peace race of bicyclists going from Warsaw through then East Germany to Prague. And it was also extremely political. They invited Western bicyclists, but they used them for their propaganda. We shouldn't forget that. It's all about politics. And that's, I think, very important. And if you look back at Germany, we can say that already from the early 1950s, just when East Germany was founded, the German Sports Association was assigned this so-called West work, that is the kind of subversion to lure sports people to come to East Germany, etc. While in the same year, the National Olympic Committee of the West said, sports is politically neutral, everybody should participate. And that reminds me very much of Korea, because that's what you say, fortunately, because you are on the, I would say, right side there, on the peace side. You You say it's neutral, it's not about politics, but that unfortunately is not the reality. And so sports was in Germany, like in Korea, always a contested place. However, we had the basic treaty between East and West Germany, and as part of that, and that was tremendously important, we had a regular discussion of sports representatives, and we had what we called a German sports calendar. So in the beginning of the year, or in the year before, the both countries came together and drew up a plan in what disciplines and in what competitions they would compete. And you see here, probably you don't see it, but you should see here, there's on the left hand the sports calendar for a few years of the 1970s. Let's say in 1977, there were 68 sports events scheduled, 40 were international. So international events maybe in West or East Germany where both sides participated, and 28 were really bilateral. Wasn't it wonderful? However, in that time, very often these plans were not fulfilled, but rather East Germany bowed out. For that or this reason, like with North Korea, it's very, very difficult. It's politics. And you see here our participation in Olympia, and we had a joint Olympic committee relatively long, or a joint team until 1964, and then we had for 20 years divided teams. And then from 1992 Olympics, fortunately, thanks to history, thanks to Helmut Kohl, thanks to George Bush and others, we could compete together again. And then suddenly we had the end of East German sports. The East German Sports Association was incorporated in the Western one. And then another very sordid chapter began, which I think one day might also reach North Korea, namely that of criminal prosecution of doping. We had in East Germany among the most doping cases, unfortunately. And I like this table. I don't know if you can see it, but for the 1970s, from 1973 to 1977, the world best swimmer, according to Swimming World, a leading paper, was always the East German. But when they, and in 1980 again, but when they found out they were all doped, so later it was all taken away the honor from them, and others, usually Americans, got then into the first place because they were not doped. So it's very, very difficult, sports competition. Now, the fundamental problem I see with sports competition, as South Korea does it now, like every other cooperation between North and South, it's so damped, sorry for the word, highly political, so high profile. Every sports event is an event where a minister comes, a province governor comes, where the whole media army of Korea comes, and South Korea, and it's never a simple, beautiful game. Invariable. With that, it depends on the political mood and can never create an independent sphere of cooperation where you say, we are just people doing soccer, we are just people skiing together. It cannot happen because it's all politics. And that means sports competition does not really pave the way for political cooperation, though we might think so. That's a narrative of the PyeongChang Olympics to say, first there was sports, then there was politics. But the reality was the other way around. Only because North Korea decided they needed politics, they allowed sports competition. I think that's very important because that shows us the realm we have of sports competition. And there's nothing wrong with this, but it makes sports competition useless as a way to foster cooperation. So the way with high-ranking, highly politicized sports meetings, we will not come from that to trust building, to foster cooperation. It's a thesis everybody of you should be against me now, I hope, because you are working for that, and you are rightly working for that, but I want to provoke you a little bit here. Now I want to tell you something else. I don't know who of you has been at this event. That was a sports competition, unfortunately, 2014, Gyeonggi-do in Yeoncheon. It was a sports competition of you were there, you know it. Chinese teams, Chinese North Korean team, let's say, North Koreans who trained in China, and South Korean teams. It was beautiful. It was not too political. There was a lot of politics involved, like having the flag of North Korea being run in Yeoncheon there. That was political 2014, but it was not too much. And it was also not too much in the media. And it was brokered by kind of private intermediaries. And I guess you had a hand in there. It was very, very good, I think. I would call that people-to-people sports. It was not an official tournament. It was not a big media event, but it was something that worked. And I think that would be a way we should try to go to. And now that's a little bit sad, because I really would hope that we have the PyeongChang, Namkangwon Winter Youth Olympics. It would be wonderful. And I love, by the way, North Gangwon province. I've often been there. We had projects there. It's a beautiful area, and certainly people are very similar to the people of South Gangwon. But it's so difficult to happen because that's already a very high-profile event. Maybe it could work to create smaller events first. I mean, now Corona makes another difficulty, unfortunately, the non-travel conditions, but that might soon be over in 1 or 2 years. And that then really you try first to foster much, much less publicized meetings, probably in China or in another third state, where you compete against each other in a friendly way. I think that's really very, very important to understand. And I want also to point back to Germany, because in Germany it was the same. We were not cleverer than you, but we had one thing which was really different, that we had private cooperation, civilian exchange between West and East Germans throughout the time of division. And myself, I grew up fortunately in West Germany, almost in the Netherlands. But my relatives lived in Saxony, near Dresden and Chemnitz, or Karl-Marx-Stadt at that time. And I could visit them every year. I was small. But my parents came with me, and we sent a package to them every, I don't know, 3-4 months, coffee, for the ladies, some underwear or something, whatever they couldn't buy in East Germany. It was beautiful. It was not political. No Secret Service of West Germany ever looked into these packages. The East Germans tried to steal something, but we took it as granted. And there was an exchange going on. And that exchange in Germany, it was 3 times bigger, the civilian exchange, than public funding. So that's also a point. Here, everything has to run. Sorry, I don't want to be critical, but because we work with Tonglbu, and they're really important partners, but everything runs through Tonglbu. And if you want to visit North Korea, one of my staff is here. She did that once. The Chagwan or Changwan, the vice minister or minister, has to decide if that's possible, that an ordinary South Korean, very harmless person goes and looks at a tree nursery in North Korea. And that's, I think, not right. To expand the realm of private exchanges. And that, in the first place, also includes sports. Because the North Koreans are eager sportsmen, they're good sportsmen, and they like this recognition. But they don't like the limelight. They don't like to be here and 100 photographers and streamers and everything are there. That is very difficult for them, because that creates trouble at home. So a much more quiet approach to sports diplomacy might work. I don't say it works. As I said, I don't feel really to understand the North Koreans. And they are clearly, we saw that now with the Beijing Olympics, it was for them a place to compete. And certainly they were disappointed they did not compete. But other goals, fighting Corona, political stability, were more important for them. So we have to accept it also that it can fail. But if it can work, I personally think it can only work if you put it firmly in the place of civilian exchanges. And now my last words are, I say them for every presentation I do, for that you also have to change your national security law. I'm not a communist and I'm not a lefty, but you have to modernize your national security law to create this realm of civil exchanges. So conclusion, we need this radically new approach, and the national security law is there. And we need to accept that the Korean government cannot control everything anymore in these sports exchanges. It's the exchange of free people doing sports. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. Can see that you've mentioned that you're not an expert in North Korea or sports, but I can see that just listening to your presentation, you truly understand this divided situation of the two Koreas because you have the experience in Germany. I can see that this was such a candid talk, especially when it comes to a divided state. And you've mentioned that Thomas Bach, every time he mentions that Olympics is neutral from politics, and you've mentioned that this is a lie, that it is truly political. So I think that you've actually hit the nail there. It's true. And if you look at the two Koreas, it's great if we can find a way to unravel this politically, but we're at a stalemate. So we're trying to find a way for sports to play a role. But I think that we also have the Vice Minister of Unification here today. But what was really important that he's mentioned was that there was a lot of civilian cooperation and education between the two Germany. So there was a lot of channels. But if you look at Korea, both North and South, we're at a stalemate and impasse between the two, politically speaking. So civilian cooperation is key, but you can see that the circumstances does not allow that. So the essence here is that, well, at least maybe sports can play a certain role in that regard, but maybe with a different approach. So thank you so much for that presentation. A big round of applause once more for our speaker, please. And let us now move on.
그동안에 이 자료에도 나와 있습니다.
Our next presentation
남북 간에 22차례의 스포츠 교류와
is going to be on 22 different kinds of sports exchange that have been held over the last 15 years. And it was really thanks to most of these sports exchange programs that we were able to have a glimmer of hope between the two Koreas. And we would like to invite Mr. Kim Kyung-sun as the chairman of the South and North Korea Sports Exchange Association.
안녕하십니까? 저는
Ladies and gentlemen,
오늘 발표할 발제 내용이
today I would like to give a presentation on it's based on my own experiences on sports exchange between the two Koreas over the past 20 years. And based on my experiences, I would like to talk about what I perceive to be sustainable sports exchange between the two Koreas. Just now we've heard from Dr. Zeliger that sports is politics, and I cannot deny that either. Today, we heard the New York Philharmonic, the quartet, give a presentation, or a performance rather, at the opening ceremony in 2008. I remember the New York Philharmonic also gave a performance in Pyongyang in the DPRK. In fact, I believe they played the national anthem of the DPRK. And the American flag flew high over Pyongyang at the time. This was possible because it was a cultural performance. Governor Choi Moon-soon of Gangwon Province say that culture cannot be seen to be political, but culture is the most sophisticated means. It's the most sophisticated political tool. And I think that sports is also a very important political tool, that it can go into places where politics cannot. And I think that it's a very peaceful means to that end. So I think that sports really is a way for us to ease conflict. It's a tool for peace, and I'm going to elaborate on why I think that is based on my performance, based on my experiences. The Beijing Olympics recently ended, and based on that, I was able to think about the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. We will be hosting the games then, and I also had the opportunity to meet with some of my counterparts in Beijing during the Winter Olympics as a spokesperson and a representative for Choi Moon-soon. And at the time, I met with 206 different members of delegations of different countries of the IOC, and we discussed the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, the Summer Olympics, Paris and Milan, all of the Winter Olympics hosts. It was a gathering of Olympic family members, in fact. There is a place there called the Olympic Club. And if you step into the Olympic Club, this area is restricted by the IOC. Politicians are not allowed entry. It's only for the Olympic family members, so IOC or NOC committee members or Olympic family members. So this means the past host nation or the future host country. There, we can engage in sports diplomacy. The FIFA is headed by somebody called the chairman, but the IOC is headed by a president. The president and a chairman are different names. They want to try to create an area of peace and cultural and sports exchange that is devoid of politics. In the past, the Olympics was very political. Even now, I think there are many aspects of the IOC and the Olympic Games that are political, but the Olympic really tries to at least strive to stay as much away from politics as possible. And now I'd like to talk about my own personal experiences. I mentioned that I went to the Beijing Games this time around. There are two goals to my visit. The first was to ask for support for the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. And to that end, I had two weapons at my disposal: the fact that we are a host nation and that we wanted to engage in more support projects for the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. And I brought a letter from Governor Choi to Thomas Bach to try to ask for more support. We have $10 million from the ROK government, $10 million from the Gangwon provincial governments. We had this budget to try to engage in more support projects, to provide training facilities and training fees for impoverished nations. And when we gave this letter to Thomas Bach, he was very thankful. Thomas Bach, after he became president, the first Olympic Games that he presided over was the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games. And at that time, the two Koreas met and we saw a glimmer of hope for peace. Thomas Bach said that he felt huge hope and huge encouragement. However, the Beijing Olympics, because of COVID, was much more diminished in scale because of the pandemic. The 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics is something that Thomas Bach is really looking forward to, because he says that Gangwon-do as a province, it is a symbol, and he said that the 200 or so members of the IOC will work together for the supports of the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. I also met with Mr. Jeremy, and he also said that he wants to lend his full support to the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. And Mustafa Barafu, the Africa IOC head, said that he is very touched by the efforts of Gangwon Province because, as I mentioned before, we have sent in a letter pledging our support to helping impoverished nations, particularly those nations where they don't have natural snow. So, we wanted to say that we want to build upon the legacy of the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics to try to have a successful 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. And when I went to Beijing, I told them about the support project that Gangwon has in mind and also our plans to hopefully have a joint hosting of the two Koreas. The different IOC member countries have pledged their support to this. This is sports diplomacy in action, and hopefully through this we can lessen the burden for DPRK to participate as a co-host and a joint host of the Winter Youth Olympic Games. There were, over the past 20 years, much political turmoil between the two Koreas, but we still engage in sports exchange, and we were able to have a bridge of hope and peace despite the crisis. And just briefly, I want to go over those some events to try to talk about hope for the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. The Korean Peninsula is a place where the two Koreas should have ownership, but we in fact don't have that ownership because there are those issues such as denuclearization and economic sanctions, and these are issues where the two Koreas themselves cannot resolve. There are these many global geopolitical tensions that exist in the Korean Peninsula. We're in the eye of the storm, and when there is no dialogue between the two Koreas, what can we do? Civilian organizations and private sector cooperation and sports exchange can help us overcome this divide. If we take that globally, that could be Olympic Games or other such bigger games. And despite these kinds of military tension and all of the different kinds of conflict and struggle over the past years, at least we have that final frontier, the final bridge between the two Koreas, which is sports exchange.
올림픽은 유엔 제재를 극복할 수 있는 유일인 방안.
The Olympics is really the only way for us to overcome the UN North Korea sanctions. 2 years ago, the DPRK already designated the Wonsan area as a resort complex, and the Baekdusan resort complex was also completed. They invested heavily into this, but they cannot make use of these complexes because of the sanctions and because of COVID-19. Who can come in and rescue these different plans? I believe that the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, if it can be joint hosted by the two Koreas, can solve this problem. So I think that this is something that the DPRK will be grateful for, because right now the political situation is very difficult. The local governments can host Olympic Games and engage in support projects, bring in host and member nations of the UN, many African countries who would be beneficiaries to our support. Early on, we heard Dr. Zeliger and show us a lot of his photographs in his presentation. Many of them were also instances where we engage in sports exchange to overcome political hurdles. In 2008, in July, as you know, there was a tourist in Kumgangsan Mountain who was killed, and because of this, the tours were suspended. However, our association, despite the difficulties and the challenges of 2008, we have continued to have the Inter-Korean Youth Soccer Exchange in that same year, which we have continued to do for 22 consecutive years. So as you can see, the DPRK allowed this sports exchange, this youth soccer event to happen. And the Conservative Party here at the ROK also allowed this to happen. So this means that although there's chaos and tension between the two Koreas, we both want at least one channel open for us to engage in cooperation. And this is through sports, and namely through youth sports. In 2010, there was the Cheonan incident, and because of this, the May 24 measures were announced by the Lee Myung-bak administration, bringing a suspension of inter-Korean exchange. However, we continue to fulfill a promise to DPRK in a third country. By that I mean China. In China, because there was so much tension between the two Koreas, and because the government had suspended all activity between the two Koreas, we were able to host some of these activities in a third nation, in China. This shows us that when we engage in sports exchange, it does not necessarily have to be in South or North Korea. Sometimes we host this in China. Let's say if there is a war situation in Ukraine, if there is a lot of conflicts in Ukraine, that does not mean that Ukraine and Russia cannot have collaboration. Perhaps they can continue to have collaboration, maybe through sports exchange on some other third nation. I think that if they try to do that, Russia and Ukraine would not say no. And I think that the neighboring countries would be willing to host that kind of exchange events. So as you can see here, there are many instances where sports has been used as a way to maintain some level of peace, even in the most extreme of circumstances. In my presentation file, I want to skip through to talk about why the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics should be joint hosted by the two Koreas. In 2009, I'm sure you remember that there were some findings, research findings, that were announced. And it said that inter-Korean economic exchange, if it can last for about 30 years, our economic size would go beyond the level of G7 countries. That is how big our economies will grow.
지원 사업을 인정한다 그런 거예요.
As I mentioned before earlier, that the IOC is supportive of our support projects. And the support projects of Korea for the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics is to help the 50 or so African nations, those nations where there's no natural snow, to allow them for a week-long training session in Gangwon-do in South Korea and possibly even an additional week-long training session in North Korea. Some of these athletes would be able to cross by bus, by land. Some of them would be able to cross by river or by the plane. So we would have all of these different routes.
북강원도 원상항으로
Oh.
바닷길을 합니다. 이 여러
By river, by land, and by air. All of these different routes will be open for the athletes as part of a support project for the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. The IOC is supportive of this, and I believe the DPRK would also be supportive of this. Once we have these routes established, these channels established, later on after the Olympic Games have ended, we can maintain them and use them as tourist trails. As I mentioned before, DPRK have invested heavily in all of these different tourist resort complexes, but they don't have tourists. They don't have sufficient traffic and transport infrastructure. However, as you know, ROK has extensive transport infrastructure. You can get from Incheon Airport within 1 hour to Gangwon-do if you just hop on a KTX train. We have this extensive infrastructure, so I believe that tourists who would like to come to Korea and also see North Korea would be able to use this trail, all of these different routes that will be used by the athletes for the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics to go tour North Korea, go see Pyongyang. In just 30 minutes, we can go from Wonsan Airport to the Paektusan area, have a day trip of Paektusan Mountain. All of these different routes would be able to facilitate these kinds of tourist activities. This is a project and an initiative that the DPRK would welcome, and it's also an economically beneficial project for the two Koreas. And this would be something that would be made possible by sports diplomacy. Gangwon-do Province has two weapons. The first is that we are a host of the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, and we also have these support initiatives in place. Yes, you can use a little bit more time. You don't have to rush too much. So, as I've been saying, the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics would be able to build on the legacy of the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. The 2018 Games led to the Panmunjom Declaration and the US DPRK summits. However, as we know, we have gone back to square one. At the time, we should have opened and recontinue the tourist trails in Kumgangsan and Mount Kumgang. If we had that civilian kind of passageway, then we might not have seen a standstill right now. When the West Sea incident took place, there were about 30 people, 30 soldiers who lost their lives. It was almost a wartime situation, but it did not escalate to war because there were civilian exchange programs such as the tourist programs in place. I think that going forward, if we can have all of these different tourist and tours, these new trails and routes and channels that will be opened by the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, this would facilitate sustainable peace for the two Koreas. And this is what we can do for the private sector. Thank you. I have said that he can use a little bit more time in his presentation because he has presented early on talking about his time spent in the Beijing Olympics. I know that he had a long presentation file prepared, but we were not able to hear most of it because of the time shortage. So maybe if there are questions later on from the floor, he can give some more comments. I know that Mr. Lee is very passionate about sports exchange, and he's also someone who is recognized not just in Seoul, but also in Pyongyang. In some of his comments, when he began his presentation, he said that there is this conflict within South Korea, but also between North Korea and South Korea. I think that there are lots of different unfortunate incidents, such as the Kaesong Industrial Complex suspension and the suspension of the Mount Kumgangsan tours. These were quite unfortunate. If we look back on them now, perhaps we should have found some other alternative. Of course, this would depend on your different position. But I think that through sports, we might be able to restore some of these different events. And the fact that in 2024, we have the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympic Games that we can leverage is an encouraging bit of news for us. Hopefully by then, COVID-19 would have dissipated and perhaps we might have had more chance for dialogue with North Korea. And the IOC President Thomas Bach said that he himself would like to see a joint hosting of the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics. And that is why he said also that we can also think about naming the Olympic Games Gangwon Winter Youth Olympic Games. Because as you know, most of the Olympic Games are named after cities. But in our case, it's named after a province because there's that openness to have a joint hosting by the DPRK as well. And I hope that Mr. Kim Kyung-sung would work tirelessly in that regard. Please give him a big round of applause. Next, we'd like to move on to our third presentation.
We have Magomed Magdi, president of the public organization Mongoose. He has sent us his video. But I would like to ask for your understanding because his audio and the video does not match, so that might be a little bit confusing, but still I ask for your understanding. A big round of applause, please.
And equality are three axioms on a healthy planet. In the 21st century, millions of public and political figures, businessmen, world-renowned personalities in the fields of music, film, science, and religion have united to maintain international peace and security through peacemaking activities, as well as to create conditions conducive to the establishment and consolidation of peace. However, on a daily, regular, gradual, and confident basis, using the tools of preventive diplomacy and cooperation, sports plays the leading role in preventing international conflicts. Sport is an ambassador for peace. The motto of the Golden Mongoose International Sports Award, calling for the resolution of intrastate and ethnic conflicts, is a metaphor for a global dialogue based on the assertion of justice and human rights, tolerance, and a culture of peace. Peace is when a Ukrainian is among the first to congratulate the Russians on their gold medal at the 17th Summer Olympics in Tokyo. Peace is when athletes from South Korea and North Korea walk together in the parade of participating countries at the opening of the 18th Winter Olympic Games in PyeongChang. I can say with confidence that the 4th Winter Youth Olympic Games in Gangwon-do, South Korea, will retain its significance in 2024. It is sport preventive diplomacy that is meant to serve as the most effective tool of international dialogue, an opportunity to maintain peaceful coexistence and cohesion through sport. The hosting of competitions of global significance will certainly strengthen mutual trust between the two states of the Korean Peninsula. The Winter Youth Olympic Games will serve as a worldwide forum for the Republic of Korea and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to raise and discuss complex issues, including war and peace. Through face-to-face interactions between athletes, coaches, and government representatives, a dialogue will be established between them. This will enable the development of ways to resolve disputes peacefully. Remember, our common goal today is to walk the difficult path from conflict to peace, to protect future generations from the scourge of war, and most importantly, to affirm the faith of peoples in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in gender equality and equal rights for nations large and small through international cooperation in sport. The peacemaking power of sport is invisible, even when faced with threats of war and human rights violations.
끝났습니까?
Is that all?
박수로.
Yes, a big round of applause, please.
아마 들어오기로 했다가 안 보이시 되니까 이제 충분한
I believe that he was to come to take part, but he probably wasn't able to provide enough presentation materials for this conference. I do know that the Mongoose Award is basically like the Nobel Prize in sports, and I believe that Mr. Kim, it was in 2019 when you won that award, and I know that you received a lot of congratulations, so it was a great honor for Korea as well. So you mentioned about the importance of sports, so thank you very much for that. In terms of the proceedings from going forward, we do have panel discussions to follow. And as I've mentioned, we also be hearing from our panelists, former Ambassador Lee Yang-gu. So with regard to the presentations, I'm sure that he can also add another layer in addition to the case that we've heard from the case of Germany. And Dr. Zeliger and Chairman Kim Kyung-sung, I think that you can also spare some time to add any more comments that you would like to deliver to the audience. So that's how I would like to proceed with the panel discussion. So first, let me now invite Ambassador Lee Yang-gu for his comments. A big round of applause, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event. I believe I was also here about a year ago, the PyeongChang Peace Forum. Try to look back at the changes that have occurred over the past year. I also have prepared some remarks, but instead of reading these prepared remarks, I think it would be better if I give more of an impromptu discussion here. Recently, the Beijing Olympics were held. It's always an honor to host such a big game, but it was also a huge burden as well. I was the ambassador to Ukraine, but the situation right now surrounding Ukraine, particularly the military tension, has already begun, and it's seeing a little bit of an escalation. This is a huge geopolitical risk as well. And we also know that the COVID pandemic has been in place for the last 3 years. And I think that there will be more repercussions of COVID in the future. There will be more competition between the US and Russia, and the DPRK has also launched another strategic missile very recently. So there are all of these different external situations that are not particularly conducive to peace right now. Recently, I read a book that says the situation before and after the pandemic were very different. The global order that was established after 1945 post-war has demolished. And we don't know what the future may bring yet. The future order has not been established yet. The current situation is kind of like a monster to us. So this is the kind of situation that we find ourselves in. Leading up to the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, we want to try to turn it into a big festival. And if we want to do so, we have to understand the current reality of the situation and try to be very professional in our preparation leading up to the games. That was the first comment that I wanted to say. The second comment is that the 2024 games could bring about peace and prosperity for the two Koreas. And to do so, I think it would be helpful if we can expand the region. There are many things that the two Koreas cannot do on our own, but cooperation continues to be very important. So we have to maintain a cooperation. In that sense, I hope that we can have more cooperation, not just on the Korean Peninsula, but somewhere else, involving us in Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, elsewhere, so that we can continue to tell more people about the importance of inter-Korean cooperation. And I do think that we should also expand the scope of the games, because we shouldn't just think about these elite sports, but also amateur sports. So not just a professional level sports, but amateur sports as well. And the sports industry is a green industry. And sports life is called a green life. And so we understand that sports is very important in our lives. Right now, around the world, we talk about SDGs and ESG and carbon neutrality and digital transformation. I think that sports is very relevant to all of these four different themes that are currently the keywords right now in the international community. In Russia, when we look at the situation unfolding there and some other countries, it brings us reasons for despair, but there are also some other countries that inspire hope and good values in us, such as the many countries that are pursuing SDGs and ESG and etc. Ultimately, it comes down to, when we look at SDGs and ESG, it means that we have to be responsible for actions. We have to be kind and nurturing so that we can have win-win. And I think that sports touches upon all of these different values, which is why we have to emphasize more participation into sports exchange. Because with sports, as you know, the sports athletes, they're always engaging in fair competition. They work very hard. They're accountable for their actions. And so I think that sports is really, it's resonance with SDG and ESG and all of these different keywords. Last year, I have proposed that we should try to think about setting up a global leadership academy for sports, so that we can have more of this leadership academy could foster sound and healthy habits through sports. This is something that sports discipline can have a role in. Earlier on, Mr. Kim Kyung-sun, the chairman, said that sports diplomacy could be very impactful, and Korea has its own ODA assets. In the private sector level, we have continued to work on our cooperation, but the government also has its ODA assets. So in terms of public cooperation, perhaps the government can engage in sports diplomacy using ODA as a means. This could be a way for us to have more develop a sports industry for Korea. One of Korea's big advantages is that we have social sports infrastructure. We have the four major river trails, the Tulle Trail, the Olle Trail, all these different trails and infrastructure that we can make use of here in Korea. Whether it be through ODA or SDG funding, we can export this know-how to other countries, and this could be a way for us to have a growth engine for corporations, but also enhance our own international standing overseas. I'm sure you've heard of what is known as the Blue Zone. These are the four villages around the world, or the four areas around the world where they see the longest longevity of the people. This Blue Zone is a project that I'm also involved in. So the Blue Zone, where towns and villages where people have really increased longevity. They have very much health and long lifespan, and they do so. One of their 9 principles is that they continue to move. They engage in sports and exercise. And you know that in Korea we have a lot of sports associations. If we love sports and we continue to exercise and work out, then our happiness index continues to go up. So this is something that we should pursue. And we can pursue this through different projects, encouraging people to ride their bikes more or walk and jog more, and have more fostering of sports associations or neighborhood associations. And this could be smart city and smart town. Earlier on, we saw the launching ceremony of the global Inter-Gangwon cooperation network. If we can have a blue zone town, maybe Gosong could be a blue zone town, for instance, and I think that this could be impactful for our efforts towards sports. The 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, what can we do to try to turn it into a big festival, have peace and prosperity for the Korean Peninsula and for the world? Right now, it's 2022, so we have about 3 years left remaining. I think that we need to come up with a very detailed roadmap leading up to the Games. I have huge expectations for the Games because, first of all, the Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics is going to be held in 2024. The Rosanna Congress is also going to be held in 2024. It's a huge religious gathering, and this is also going to be held in Korea, which is why 2024 is going to be a very important year. Many religious faith believers would come to Korea at that time in 2024. And lastly, the UN Procurement Office and the Korea's SDG Council host an SDG forum every year, and they also host an exhibit. As you know, the DPRK is somewhat surprisingly very much open to the idea of SDGs, and the UN is also trying to facilitate more efforts with SDGs within the DPRK. So hopefully in 2024, because all of these different events are going to be held, that maybe we can have an Inter-Korean SDG Expo. We can organize like that in 2024. The SDG Expo could be very wide-ranging and include a lot of different issues and subjects. So I think that this could be a very important way for us to have sports be an anchor for peace and prosperity. And we can demonstrate this to all of us in 2024. And I hope that Gangwon and PyeongChang can play that role. Thank you very much.
네, 고맙습니다. 저도 보니까 1년 전에 우리 대사님하고 같이 여기서
Yes, thank you very much. I remember that it was a year back when we held an event together. And typically, one year, what would happen is you get older, but I can see that you have even more fresh, novel ideas. Maybe it's all because of COVID.
것 때문에
And because of COVID,
이후의 질서는
you can see that the order that was sustained since 1945 is obsolete, and you can see that the future is truly not something that we have anticipated. So it's in 2 years, in 2024, where the Winter Youth Olympics in Gangwon will take place, and I think that it carries substantial meaning.
아까 그 골든 몽구스
And of course, the president of Golden Mongoose actually sent a very short video, so we have a lot of time remaining for our panel discussion. We're supposed to close this session at 6:50.
저 사회 보는 사람 주어진 시간
And I know that there's a lot of time allotted for the moderator, so I think there's not much that I can share here. So I would like to ask our two speakers to actually add additional comments from 2 to 3 minutes, of 2 to 3 minutes or so, if you do have any. And I know that we have many experts here today on this very topic joining us in the audience. And I would like to ask you to jot down a couple of questions and pose these questions, get your questions ready as while the two speakers add some more comments. And you may designate the guest to answer your question. So I would like to invite 2 or 3 questions, voluntary questions from the floor. And I think that would make this session much more productive. So then, let me go in the reverse order. First, Chairman Kim Kyung-sun, would you like to spare 2 to 3 minutes to maybe share some more comments? It could be in response to Ambassador Lee's comments. Anything that you would like to add? Please proceed. So why don't we give him a big round of applause? I think there's no reason to save our applause. So please.
이제 오늘 개막식에 이제 참석하신 분들은
I
보셨을
think those of you who attended the opening ceremony would know you have seen the New York Philharmonic performance.
공연이 아니죠.
As you know, they are a world-renowned group, and the fact that they performed here is quite meaningful.
얻어진 신뢰를 바탕으로
They have built trust with the DPRK when they performed in North Korea, and I think that trust continues
전지 훈련을 내려왔어요.
to this day. In 2007, at the time,
인천공항에
in March or so, I believe the U.S. ROK combined military exercises were being held here. At the time, there was a month-long athletic practice session that was held there. That was the first time I actually met Governor Choi Moon-soon. He was at MBC at the time. And there was a lot of support that we were able to have. And in China, in Kunming, we were able to host an academy of sorts to try to provide free sports exchange to North Korean youth. So it was a free kind of athletic summer camp or spring camp for DPRK youth athletes. And this kind of trust built up between the DPRK and MBC. And later on, this led to the performance of the New York Philharmonic. In fact, it was Governor Choi Moon-soon, who was the head of MBC at the time, who organized the performance of New York Philharmonic. And at the time, he said that hopefully we can have an end-of-war declaration between the DPRK and the U.S. And as governor, he was able to host the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games.
캐리 국무차관과
And in Kerry, Secretary, Assistant Secretary Kerry, and Kim Young-nam, and Kim Yo-jong later on sat in the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games.
2024 올림픽은 바로
Choi Moon-soon wanted to have more of a bridge between the U.S. and DPRK. But after the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games, much of those efforts were derailed. That is why he's trying to have a second attempt with the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, because we have this weapon that is currently at our disposal, this weapon of sports exchange.
베르나르드
Yes, Mr. Zeliger, would you like to give us your comments?
Okay. Yeah, the first thing which came into my mind when Ambassador Lee talked about the roadmap towards the Winter Youth Olympics, it's very, very few time. And I wonder, did you ever consider to invite North Koreans to an online event, planning event or whatever on that? Because North Koreans, we can observe in the recent year, started to become relatively active for North Koreans in joining such events. And it would be really a good thing, not invited by the South Koreans, because they wouldn't come, but to say the International Olympic Committee or some preparatory committee, which is a multilateral institution, could invite them to a meeting to get a first contact again. And then I would talk about the how, what, and where of competition. And the first thing is the where. Third countries, I think in the moment the only way to start cooperation again. North Koreans will not easily come to South Korea. That is true. And that was true in the last 10 years basically also, with this one short exception of 2018 to April 2019. And I really would consider go into third countries and don't go into developing countries. North Koreans, I hope they don't look here, they're snobbish. They like the big thing. They like America, they like Europe, they like Switzerland, they like big names. So invite them to another country. You need to spend some money, but you have this big inter-Korean cooperation fund. Since 20 years, you have $1 billion inside, which you never ever spend. Use some of that money. It's your money, and it cannot be better used. And then, with whom? What I was a little surprised of, you never mentioned university sports, because amateur sports is nice, but North Korea doesn't really have amateur sports on a large scale. I mean, they have school sports, they have university sports, army sports, but not really civilian sports. So think of universities, because, for example, Kim Il-sung University does have, I think, 20 or 30 nominal partners in the world, and you could go through this channel. And finally, the how, I think, and that's about these international restrictions. It is a problem with sanctions, but and sanctions exemptions won't help you, because that means you have a spotlight on an event, you have to mention everything beforehand. So go to the Americans before you go to the North Koreans and tell them to negotiate a damn deal where they say, okay, sports is sports, humanitarian is humanitarian, and economy is a different business. And if a little bit of money goes here and there, that's the course of the world. It was also in Germany. When we spent money on East Germany, also not all ended for purely humanitarian. And the Secret Service stole money, and they took money for our motorways and put it into their army or whatever. But in the end, it were peanuts compared to the goal we wanted to have, cooperation. So we really should negotiate that.
네, 이게 이양구 대사님한테.
Yes, thank you. I don't think that was a question just for Ambassador Lee, but I think that those ideas were very excellent. Engaging in online exchange with the DPRK. This is something that we could have. In fact, I understand that many defectors, North Korean refugees, have that kind of online connection with their homeland, and the fact that we can think about hosting in a third country, and thinking about not just who, but the how question. These are very important questions that you've raised. Ambassador Lee, would you like to respond?
예, 제가 또 동북아 공동체 문화재단 대표를 맡고 있는데요.
I'm also a part of an organization. It's a cultural organization where we support different organizations in Yanbian, and also we try to do some outreach to North Korea. And I was also a consul at Vladivostok. So I understand very well that the DPRK does not want to maybe sometimes interact with us directly, but they might be open to go through a third nation, Russia, of course, and also even places like Mongolia. So
의사를 양성하는 거라든지
the fact that when it comes to nurturing talent, educational and training programs, maybe training for doctors or physicians, DPRK is always open to that. And so with sports as well, if there is a way that we could do outreach to try to nurture their sports industry, for example, or have more sports professionals, this could be an enticing way to get the DPRK to cooperate with us, perhaps in a third country, such as Russia or Mongolia and elsewhere.
모 대학에서 이제
There is one university
동북 삼성
in the northeast provinces of China
중국 이렇게 3개국 간의 어떤 그 대학을
that is thinking about trying to create a campus or a university that could serve students in the Republic of Korea, the DPRK, and China, and have a kind of a degree, a program for those three countries. And I think that that's also meaningful.
할 때는 그 처음에는
Yeah, so there were many comments, and typically when we do ask our audience to interact, we sometimes call on certain members of the audience, but we do have former Vice Minister Kim Young-sup here today, so a big round of applause. Would you like to share with us some of your comments, please?
반갑습니다. 저는
Hello.
발제하시고 패널 참석하신 분들에게서 이제
So today we've heard some good presentations and panel comments, and thank you very much, Professor Park, for giving me the opportunity to share my comments with you.
말씀해 주신 것 중에서
So out of the many things that were mentioned, the fact that sports
하나의 이제
can be a good channel to connect the two Koreas, and that
행동을 옮기신 우리 김경성
and we've been seeing Chairman Kim of the various examples where he actually implemented upon that vision, and I find that very trustworthy. But Dr. Zeliger has mentioned that
남북 관계 제가
when it comes to the government, of course I was a government official, but you can see that even sending of fax is controlled by the government. But in terms of the civilian cooperation, just like we saw in the case of Germany, it would be great if we can provide some more autonomy to the civilians and open up some more new opportunities, and I cannot agree more to that comment.
제가 이제 말씀드리고 싶은 건
And one point that I'd like to mention is that, well, today's topic is basically Gangwon 2024 Winter Youth Olympic Games and Inter-Korean Peace Promotion Measures. So I believe that in the future, the younger generation will be leading the process, whether it be the South or the North. You can see that we need to break away from this Cold War type of thinking. If you look at those that were born in the 80s and 90s, those in their teens, you can see that they're no longer tied to such type of propaganda or such a thought process. And I think that they will now take a new approach. And if you look at 2024, it's the Youth Olympic Games. The Youth Olympic Games is a great sports event, but it also has to do with bringing the youth, the future leaders, together to take part, to participate even more than ever before. And I hope that it does serve that purpose. And in 2024, the Winter Youth Olympic Games, we do have Chairman Kim that is supporting the games. So if you can maybe give us some more information on how you're going to support the games, that'd be great. And also, Dr. Zeliger, could you maybe give us some more advice in terms of some youth cooperation or exchange in Germany, in the two Germanys? Thank you. Yes, thank you. So I will be giving the speakers some more time to prepare their answers. And now let me move on to another member in the audience.
Yes.
Yes,
I did not see you there for a while.
My question is to Professor Bernhard. It's related to sports diplomacy. Actually, I'm from Pakistan. More than 220 million people are living in Pakistan, and more than 500 million people are living in India. But in last decade, our sports diplomatic relations they are not good. So countries have banned the sports relations. So whenever I saw any cricket match or any other sports, people are really enjoying. So, but the sports diplomacy banning, it's really putting the negative psychological effects directly on the public. So, do you think UN should ban the diplomatic tools against the countries? Like some countries, either North Korea or South Korea, Russia, they are also using the sports diplomatic tools against geopolitical relations. Yes, thank you.
이거 좋으신 말씀입니다.
Yes, thank you very much for that good question. Yes, we have India and Pakistan, of course. And any more questions from the floor?
Hello, my name is Tony. I'm from Indonesia. I just want to comment. Now I'm studying major of sports management in Seoul National University. So the first time I know the unification process of North and South Korea is in sports. You know, in Asian Games 2018 is in Indonesia. So vast majority of Indonesian people knows the unification of South and North Korea is based on that moment. And so years after the tournament, after the Asian Games, our young people, kids and teenagers use the moment of that when we fight each other in sports, in grassroots level, we can say that North Korea and South Korea are peace in sports. Why we cannot do that in sports, in our sports? Because you know, in Indonesia we have 300 more tribes. So sometimes when we held local games, local tournaments, they fight each other. But based on the North and South Korea in one flag in Asian Games 2018 in Jakarta, we inspired by that. So it's not the question, but we hope Indonesian hope Korean Peninsula will have a bright future in peace. Thank you.
좋은 예를 지적하셨네요. 자카르타.
Thank you very much for that comment. Yes, in Jakarta. We'll like to hear from one more person from the floor.
My name is Oljas. I'm from Kazakhstan. I'm a group mate of Doni, also studying in Seoul National University. Thank you very much for great speeches. I really get a lot of new information for myself about the sports and relationships of North and South Korea. So I don't have a question. I have maybe a small suggestion. Actually, by what I hear, speakers mentioned about art that we've seen on opening ceremonies, that musical performance. Then it was mentioned sport, the main topic, and then it was mentioned the meeting in 2024, the religious leaders of the world also in Korea. So I'm just curious, is it possible also to bring another thing like history of sports? Because Mr. Kim said that there is already football matches was going on between North Korea and South Korea teams, and maybe to make some small documentary, adding up all the maybe some archery when North Korea and South Korea was unified. There may be in archives, in libraries, there is some pictures as people unified. It's like playing archery, some national sports, and also that football games, and making small documentary. Because as previous ex-vice minister said, the youth will be bringing things. So youth need to have some examples that last like maybe 100 years ago, everything was okay. So actually we can bring it back. So they will have some basement, some historical basement, the facts on which they can stand and build that good building. But they will need to have that strong basement, based on history. And I'm sure that before North Korea and South Korea had a lot of good moments in sports, and not only in sports. So maybe to make a small documentary about that moments, to put all that things together from archives, so the youngsters can see that it's not always been like this, that North Korea and South Korea been together before, and they had a wonderful moment. So they can be inspired by that pictures or maybe stories and so they can live up with that and continue that legacy in future.
Thank you. 아마 김경성 이사장께서
Yes, Chairman Kim, I do know that he put together a video on the history of soccer between the two Koreas, so I think that's good to note. And in 2 years, it's the Youth Olympics. So I think that there were a lot of questions on that. So that was a very good question, so thank you for that. So first, Dr. Zeliger, would you like to comment or respond to some of the questions? And then I would like to invite Chairman Kim, and then I will wrap up.
Well, first of all, I was certainly very happy, former Vice Minister, about what you said. And it's really not easy to give up this control by the state, but it's almost a burden for the state also nowadays. And I think it ties very well in with what our questioner said about the situation in Pakistan and India, though I don't know it. But if we have sports as narrowly understand sports diplomacy, it's always politics. So, and I think also the North Koreans, I see it in other fields better because I'm not a sportsman. Let's say in the field of water, South Korea founds an organization in Northeast Asia regarding water, and then they hope to lure in the North Koreans. They have an organization for forestry, and they lure in the North Koreans, but they are not stupid. So if you take it too narrowly, you go into a third country just to invite the North Koreans. Probably it wouldn't work. It can only work if it's really genuinely a civilian exchange, and I think that's what's also the problem, but I'm not so sure about the situation between Pakistan and India. It must be really coming from the civilian sector and not related to the government. And the only other thing I can add or impress once more is this question of online meetings, because it's not only about defectors. I mean, that wouldn't be good for North Koreans to talk about, but there are ongoing online seminars with North Koreans, and we do them, for example, in the field of forestry or environment, and others do it in other fields. And you could really relatively easily, there was a meeting on maritime issues recently where North Korea, even on the government level, participated. So you could really imagine and say, on the Olympic level, you invite different countries to an online meeting, and I'm sure the North Koreans would be very interested, because from everywhere, from the embassies of North Korea in European countries, from our partners in Pyongyang, we hear they are very eager to reconnect, not necessarily with South Koreans, but with the international community. They clearly, the last 3 years took a terrible toll on them, or the last 2 years. It was not very easy for them. And they want again to exchange. And online is not as good as offline, but it's the first start.
감사합니다. 마지막.
Thank you very much for their contribution. We'd now like to ask Mr. Kim Kyung-sun to give his comments. Thank you very much for your insightful comments. Particularly, I would like to thank Representative Mr. Zeliger, Mr. Lee Young-gu, and all of our comments from the floor. Thank you very much. Over the past 20 years or so, we have engaged in about 22 counts of sports exchange programs. 6 of them were in ROK, 8 in the DPRK, and the rest were held in a third nation. So if we could not host it in either of the two Koreas, we went to a third country. Because of the May 24 measures, when there was a factory once in North Korea, the factory had to be closed. This was relocated to China with the ROK capital and North Korean laborers with Chinese land and facilities being used. So that was also an issue of an incident of trilateral cooperation, where Gangwon was invited for the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympic Games, because we're the host, that we were invited to come to the Beijing Olympics, and because we pledged support to African countries, about 54 African countries, because we pledged support to provide support to them because they don't have natural snow. We were able to have sports diplomatic measures in full force in Beijing because we're a host country, plus we have these support measures in place. We know that the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympic Games are going to be for the future generation, for the youth generation. And our support is going to begin in April. We're going to start providing contributions to African nations and etc.
그 원산을 갈 때
At the time, we proposed to the DPRK that when we are to travel to Wonsan, for example, and the African athletes go to Wonsan to train, we said that perhaps we should also have some South Korean children or South Korean youth go with them to Wonsan because they have this vague fear about North Korea. Earlier on, we had saw that interview with the Philharmonic performers, and they said that they were vaguely afraid of going to North Korea because they don't know. They didn't know anything about North Korea. It's the same with us. We think that North Korea is bad, and we have this vague fear of North Korea. How can we overcome this? I think that the 2024 support projects and sports diplomacy can allow us to overcome this fear.
그다음에 아까 저기 인도네시아
This was something that our different speakers from Indonesia, Pakistan have all said that if we can engage in sports diplomacy,
저는 충분히
I think that if you can perhaps maybe later on be host nation to important games, that you can overcome these kinds of efforts. Thank you very much. We have heard very great comments from everyone. We have, yes. Ambassador Lee, I would just like to add a little bit.
성공을 위한다면은
For success of the 2024 Games, I think that we have to rescue ourselves from two things. The first is that we shouldn't necessarily tie all that we do to peace. And secondly, we shouldn't necessarily tie everything that we do with North Korea. We have to be able to think more broadly so that we can, in the end, achieve peace with North Korea. So we have to see this from the perspective of a more global perspective. So we shouldn't be burdened by our own worries and concerns a little bit too much. And secondly, we have to understand this is for the youth. So in 2024, the World Jamboree is going to be held in Saemangeum. So over the next 3 years, we're going to work really hard. And I think that Korea is going to be center stage for different youth festivals. So you have to keep that in mind as we go into 2024. Thank you.
자, 이제 마무리하겠습니다.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me wrap up. Thank you so much for all of those insightful comments.
좋은 것 같습니다.
And I think we are lucky because you can see that we have this event in 2024. So the Winter Youth Olympics is to take place in 2 years. Why do I believe that this is an exciting news? It was briefly mentioned, but you can see that the political and the military conflicts between the two Koreas is so severe. We cannot find a way to solve this. We had the Korean War, and recently you can see that we were trying to go for the DPRK US summit, and we tried to find a way to push forward for the end of war declaration. I thought that they would be against it, but they also tried to support this. And North Korea could not take part in the Beijing Olympics. And you can see that there were a number of failures, but I do believe that failure is the mother of success. And all that remains is that card of success, because it was just a series of failures. But you can see that we do have these political issues. But then this event, it's a sporting event, and it's supposed to take place in Gangwon. It would be the Youth Olympics in 2024. So this is like basically the roadmap that was offered by IOC, and I think that this is going to be excellent news. So let me wrap up. The Winter Youth Olympics.
증진 방안을 내놓을 것인가?
How will it promote inter-Korean peace? Thank you very much for all of your insightful comments, and we hope that that does come true. Yes, thank you very much for all of your words. And as was mentioned, there are challenges that cannot be solved with politics, but the sports can definitely be a good channel for us to find that solution. And I think that we all do agree on this idea. And how are you going to utilize sports diplomacy? Well, through the comments by our presenters and our members of the audience has given us great food for thought. So it was a very productive, insightful session. Once again, I would like to extend my gratitude to all of our participants for contributing. And 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympics, I truly hope that we do engage in a joint host with North Korea. And with that, let us close this session. Thank you very much. So this is the end of today's session. However, PyeongChang Peace Forum continues on tomorrow. So from 10 to 11:30, we will have the first session on peace and public diplomacy. So I would like to ask for your interest tomorrow as well. Thank you.